So on Saturday, we went to the theater, and we went to, it's called, here it's called Duck Soup Theater. And basically what they've been doing is they've been playing silent movies. They do this like 3, 4 times a year. And we watched Her Wild Oat. And the thing about silent movies is the majority of them are lost. Either the film is completely destroyed and there's only a few scenes left, or it's just completely gone. Or the other half of it is the music that would always be played in the theater by the organist. All that music is pretty much destroyed. So the person that was playing the organ at this event actually had to recreate the score for it. And he did a pretty decent job on it. The interesting thing was, of course, they have the standard looking organ that you would see back then with all the little bells and whistles, but apparently the top keyboard, as a 3 keyboard layered system, the top keyboard is actually electronic. Or maybe all of them are, but every now and then he'd switch the patch. So they do, because it wasn't an organ and also a Foley person that would be in the thing, right?
Did they play in the Moog?
That must be on tour, because I have friends in New York who saw that recently as well. And I told them, if you like that, you should try and find the rebuilt Napoleon with the orchestral soundtrack on it, which is a really, Kevin Brownlow and Gill and Brownlow did a huge amount of recreation of those movies. And Napoleon, I think, is the best.
Really? Okay.
I have a friend who's a piano tech with really big bands, and he tells me that if you see anything at a concert on stage, they're never real. They always pull out the piano guts or leave them in there and just disconnect them and put in a velocity sensing electronic keyboard, because you can't keep a piano in tune and travel it around the world. A
piano or organ, for that matter. But the bigger thing was, if the one thing he did say, he said, "I'm trying to keep it true to sound." And yet he put in other, like there's this one character that she's kind of the diva, and so she has her own little theme to her. So whenever he played that theme, he switched the patch, so it wasn't really an organ. So it really wasn't true, 100% true, but you just had to get over that small little hump. But he did a great job in recreating to make it, because he basically said the organist had to make the story really happen, because there was no audio, there was no real Foley, there was nothing, except for words that show up on the screen every now and then. And it was pretty interesting how they did that. And of course, they had other things, like they had a saxophone sextet played beforehand. They had magicians, they had balloon animal balloon artists, and all that other stuff before the show. So it was a full night with a movie that was attached. So
I want to see a Western where somebody has half coconuts and plays the horses. That'd be cool.
My sister won't go with me to the movies because I always read the dialogue that comes up on the screen out loud.
even an announcer too long.
The exits are clearly marked for your help. In the event of a fire.
Watched Singing in the Rain the other day again. Still, I think, one of the most historically accurate movies about that period of time, strangely enough.
It's a beautiful movie, too. Gene Kelly. Man.
The transition from silent to sound is, I once had to write a thesis on that subject.
Jeffrey, do they do Rocky Horror Picture Show at that theater?
Not at that theater. We have a theater, of course, Madison's a capital. So on one side, we have like 3 main theaters in that downtown area, and it's a smaller theater, but it's done on the other side of the Capitol. So
that's quite an
generations are passing along the Rocky Horror experience, or whether it's all 65 and 70-year-olds.
I'm either sad or happy to tell you I've seen it live 4 times.
Yeah,
with a real cast. And the first thing they do at the start of the show is they go, "If anybody throws anything on the stage." The performer, because there's a line. There's a line.
You can identify the people with raincoats.
Well, no. But in the original, there's a line in the original, which is I'll Take You to Paradise. And what's called a Mand Almond Joy here in the UK was known as a bounty bar. So when they say, and their slogan was, let me take you to paradise. So the moment they say that line, bounty bars hit the stage. But well, they're fairly, they're like a Mars bar or
Yeah.
Snickers. They're fairly heavy.
Well, they also had the rice throw, either rice or toast, depending on where you watched it.
Or
What your
both.
preference is.
Rice
Let
at the wedding.
me take you to Mars, and then boom,
You wonder where performance interactivity came from? There you go.
Skittles has got to play prominently in there somewhere.
Skittles wasn't invented until the 80s, or 90s. So probably I've
They
never
were
heard of it.
Smarties before then.
Love Smarties. My
How
favorite.
about Mike and Ike?
Yeah, that can go either way, though. It can either be fabulous or it pulls your fillings out. If you get that one box that's been in there for a year and a half.
Whoever is the fabulous reader today, could I request a sound check?
Yeah, that's me, and go ahead.
Okay, good morning from Austin, Texas. Nigel Dessau on the Stella X2, a Mix Pre 3, a Mac Mini, and I'm just a little bit hot, as they would say. So let me just come down a little smidgen of an amount to see if I can get closer to the 24. That's more like it.
You have successfully smidged your way down. As long as we're doing this, let's continue. Mitch Hill is going to be next, followed by Chris Fenwick, followed by Jeffrey Powers. So Mitch is gone. He's back.
Yeah,
He had to get
that
up his...
FTP button on the, that one. It should be covered up. Hi, Mitch Hill speaking into an AKG 414, into a 205, a Symmetrix 528E, FX3, M1 Mac out to Zoom.
And there you go. That's the chain. For those of you who might be new to the show, we talk about all the equipment that we're going through to reach you. Not auditorially. That's a room at a high school where they perform programs. Anyway, Chris Fenwick.
You're thinking of the Kappa Gymatorium.
Oh,
I'm
that's
speaking
right.
into a microphone that goes into a mixer and a little Korg thing, and then through a bunch of software, and it all gets into the computer somehow.
Somehow, miraculously, your voice hits us accurately and clear as a bell. So you're good.
Chris's
Jeffrey Powers.
voice is very low today.
Yeah, he's down there.
Is a Kappa Gymatorium something that's at a fraternity? I don't know. Jeffrey Powers from Madison, Wisconsin. I'm running a Shure MV7 going into the computer, and now it's looking towards just a slight bit high. So let me fix that really quick.
I'm not sure I ever want to be in a Kappa Gymatorium or watching a movie of the same if it's done in smell-o-vision. That would be an interesting combination of
Eating
odd
turducken.
food,
All right, here we
old
go
socks.
again. Here we go. Jeffrey Powers from Madison, Wisconsin. I'm running a Shure MV7 going into the... Oh, I don't have original sound on. Let me do that again, bring that back up. Jeffrey Powers from Madison, Wisconsin. I'm running a Shure MV7 going into the computer. Jeffrey Powers from Madison, Wisconsin. I'm running a Shure MV7 going into the computer. And there we're starting to hit numbers again.
Okay, I think everybody, until somebody else shows up, we're there. So welcome, one and all. And to those of you who might be listening on IceCast, welcome to you as well.
Why do you suppose they call it IceCast? I get Shoutcast, but IceCast.
Maybe it's a winter fisherman who started the whole thing.
Stopple cast, the fish police.
Well, the question is, when you simply drop your sinker and bobbin into a hole in the ice, is it casting or are you mostly ice dropping? Inquiring minds want to know.
If you have a pocket fisherman, how does that work?
Yeah, that's
I
true.
don't want to know.
Remember the Second City bit where they chase him around with it was the fish police? Stop or I'll cast.
Actually, I think with ice fishing, it's called bobbing, not casting.
Is it? Okay, there you go.
Yeah, because you drop the line with a bobber on it, and then you just sit there and drink beer until the fish.
I remember the first time I went fishing, I was fascinated with bobbers because there was a button and a little hook, and you could push the button and the little hook would come out. And I don't know why, but that just really interested me as a 5-year-old.
You ever hook yourself fishing?
I came pretty close because you always at that age want to see how sharp is this really?
Yeah, I've gotten the somebody actively throwing the
You
cast
actually
up behind him and grabbing my shirt. Luckily, it wasn't my face.
Man, yeah. Fish hooks are not fun. I thought for many years that the spines of cholla cactus were like fish hooks, and I mistakenly thought that when they hit the moisture of your bloodstream, they'd curl up inside but it's not that. They have like little fish hook kind of spikes, not spikes, but sharp flaps that open up once it gets in you. So it goes in real easy, but to get them out, you need needle nose pliers. It's not a fun process.
Shakes out white, turns blue.
In this case, turns very red because you leak the oil of life. Wow, big group of questions today. Excellent.
Yeah, they kind of
Producers.
popped up around 4 or 5 in the morning. It was amazing.
Did they? Big flood in? Let's see what's popular. Oh, good job, Robert Soji.
Yeah, we had a long talk about that last night on After Hours.
Oh, nice. I got to come back. I just have so little time now that I've got these 3 books going. Plus, I went in yesterday for my annual physical. Had a good day. Nothing wrong.
I love this question about 8mm to VHS-C to VHS to digital.
I haven't gotten there yet, obviously.
Yeah, there used to be camcorders with those little mini VHS tapes in them.
That's when I was selling DVDs and VCRs and bears on my-
VHS-C, those little tiny compact cassettelets.
I don't even think Sony made them. I think it was somebody came along, like JVC or somebody like that.
No, Sony didn't make VHS. Well, actually, that's
Yeah,
not
Sony
true.
was
They did.
beta.
Later they did.
Yeah.
VHS-C was popularized mostly by JVC.
Japan
Think-
Victor
I-
Corporation.
Think Panasonic may have had one.
You ever shoot with Super VHS or SVHS?
Oh, yeah.
I used to love in the 80s walking up to the rental counter at, what was it, the warehouse, I guess it was. And I'd drop down a couple of movies, a couple of VHS, a couple of betas. And they'd, feel bad for me, like, oh, sorry, sir, you have different
Betas look better.
you have different formats here. And I'd say, oh, that's okay. I made an adapter.
I used to do all my editing on SVHS. I used to have a slaved JVC pair, and I spent a year for friends doing wedding videos, and I promise never to do another one again because they are miserable as a job. But
I'm going to start a business doing divorce videos.
well, it's only half the amount of work.
That's hilarious.
It's half the amount of work.
I need a blog or something about the exact phrase I hear the moment I connect, and I just connect with Courtney saying, I need to do divorce videos.
Good morning. How are you, Jeff?
Good morning, good.
You want to do a quick mic check and get that check box checked?
Original sound on, and not the same fancy meter that we had just a moment ago. This is the regular old reliable meter.
Yeah, I think you're fine. I saw 25 there at the end, which is so close to 24 as to be negligible, since we all alter one or two LUFs.
20.
Hey, Courtney.
Going with this meter, and I'll make the numbers go up and down, but then eventually they'll figure out what it's usually around, and looking a little bit, maybe, no, it should level out. Okay.
I saw the mythical 24 come by.
Courtney, there's a question from Michael Marsh. Is this true? He says the archivist has PCs, not Macs, so ProRes is not an option. Is that true?
The
That's
archivist
his
says what?
client's thinking.
PCs?
It's not
The question
native.
says,
Yeah.
excuse What?
It's technically not. It wasn't true like 5 years ago, but they created a ProRes codec for PC in the last few years. So
Yeah, well, there was this third party that did, but yeah. You could get the third party codecs for ProRes that run on
Remember
on a
QuickTime
PC.
7 Pro
QuickTime.
version?
You know, this is another reason I hate Apple. Sorry, did I say that?
That's the quiet
Sorry,
part out
Ron,
loud,
that's
Courtney.
it's been a while, Courtney.
You did
Yeah.
just say that, Courtney.
When they made
Courtney
they
doesn't
made,
like Apple.
they
When
made
did that
QuickTime for
happen?
Windows. They made QuickTime for Windows and purposely made it a dog. So they'd say, "See how much better these videos play on an Apple? You know, it just it's all stuttery on Windows, and it's because it used the CPU for everything, but never used the GPU for acceleration. And of course, they wrote everything to use the GPU on Apple. So it
Do you
made it
think
look
it
like
was-
such a dog.
Do you think it was insidious or just dumb?
I thought it
You
was.
think
on
they
purpose.
purposely made it
No, I
bad?
think it was definitely on purpose. Then they stopped, and then you'll notice they stopped even making QuickTime for Windows.
Yeah. Do you think it may have had something to do with the fact? Well, no, you think it was on purpose. So you said you think definitely, which
But
is a
if you-
contradiction, but okay.
If you installed Premiere Pro on your PC, it would have a QuickTime codec installed.
Not anymore. It doesn't use QuickTime.
Well, it doesn't
Right.
use Windows. Doesn't use Windows Media. That's kind of
No,
Yeah.
isn't that the whole point of the? I don't think Premiere uses the QuickTime framework, and that's why starting at about Premiere CS4 or 5, it could play like H.264 in real time.
I still play QuickTime on my Premiere Pro, and I still export QuickTime
You
on
can play
Premiere
it.
Pro.
It has
Hold
a
on.
QuickTime codec.
yeah, I used to in my workflow. I used to have a Blackmagic video monitor that recorded, and it only recorded in ProRes. And before that, the Atomos Ninja that recorded only in ProRes. So I brought everything in on PC at that time. And this is back in 2017, 2018. And yeah, I was able to convert everything, and I converted to MP4 just for space for what I do. And yeah, I was able to bring it in, convert it, and go from there. But I could also store it and keep it as ProRes if I wanted to.
Yeah, you couldn't natively play QuickTime in Windows. I don't know what it is now, but at one time.
Yeah, I think it was VLC that I played it in. Yeah, but everything I play in is VLC. I don't use the other players.
Hey, Mitch, your question about blanking some shows. What were you trying to get at there?
The audio is fine. No video, just all black.
Okay. So video
And it
goes
does it
black.
selectively. It's very strange.
Okay. I just wanted to know that I was reading it in context correctly. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm here to answer that more. It's got me mystified. And yet, on my upstairs machine, it has the embedded version of like HBO Max and all that. No problem.
Yeah. It just triggered in me blanking interval, and I was trying to get my head out of
Sorry.
vertical interval. That's all right. No problem. It's
Not
it's
that.
absolutely fine.
I thought you were just editing yourself in that question. It's the blanking shows.
Oh, see how it happens?
There we go. Jeff, did you do your panel check? No, we did his audio. Oh, Alex is here. Good morning, Alex. Is that you or is that a freeze frame?
No,
That's a freeze frame.
hold on. We're having this problem.
No,
That's
he's
the
just
quizzical
really
Alex.
focused and thinking.
He's really frozen.
So
And he really likes Jay Giles' band.
Cold up there in Northern California.
Freeze frame.
this is now
Let's do a clutch cargo
some,
lip wipe on Alex's still.
Hi, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm the voice of Clutch Cargo. Can't you tell?
Better than
I'm
I'm
the
the lips of clutch cargo.
Yeah.
oh, interesting. Jump to the weird camera. There we go. That's fascinating. Just a quick reminder that we have a great panel and we have a lot of questions. Please don't shoot into the dark. If you don't know the answer, don't raise your hand. Note that you should get ahead. Don't guess at anything because we probably have enough people. Unless you see nobody raising their hand, try to not raise hands past 4 people. So if you see 4 people, unless you really think that they're not going to answer the question, try to leave it to 4. You may notice me locking things ahead of time if I get to 4. So just stay ahead. Look at the questions. We got the most questions we've ever started with. so anyway, so just as a note, and if I, feel like there's not a lot of protein in the answer, I may start to cut you off, and please let me do that. It means that you're talking a lot about something that's probably not part of the conversation. I do that to myself. I need people to cut me off. Sometimes you just get into the answer. So, but we're not trying to be short. We want to be complete in our answers, but we also want to be concise. So, because we've got a lot of questions. So just a quick reminder. All right. And I will be right back after I get my tea.
I'm still waiting for the animation that does like the big shepherd's crook, hook, and grabs whoever the speaker is, drags their window off the screen and back to the host.
Well, we could do like the, Academy Awards does, just have one of the little panels that the, extra Zoom ISO panels just go, wrap it up, flashing.
Or start playing music in the background and just keep raising the level until you obscure what they're saying.
They're playing me off. I hear Alex playing me off now. So I would like to thank my agent and the wife and kids.
I think your picture on the screen should just get smaller and smaller and smaller.
And they
Receding
slowly
into-
fade you down.
But just not fade, but the wipe out to a spot.
Or the pressure, like the height stays the same, but the sides start, squeezing in.
We have a countdown clock on your answer. You have 10 seconds. Go.
Speaking of which, why is the HBO logo so lame? The static logo they use?
Because they've been using it since its birth. Well,
It's always
almost.
been pretty lame.
Mhm.
Now it's a 4K version. Or it's a high def version.
And in fact, it's outlived static because you don't see static on TV sets anymore. There is no such thing as analog transmission.
It's okay.
Is it still even the HBO logo?
Outlived. Some of his live programs have outlived their usefulness as well. So
Mitch, did you look at the Chris Widener question, and did you make sense out of the middle block of that?
Heading there?
Thanks. The one about Facebook at the start.
Oh, Bill, I can really hear that switch.
Yeah,
than
I'm pounding and I'm not using it like I usually do in the show.
The
If I'm
first Chris
careful.
Widener question, is that what you're referring to? The 940
Starts with since Facebook will disable.
Yeah, I'm looking it over.
Your noise assist doesn't seem to be working, Bill, if you have it.
Yeah, I do. Let me double check that it's on. Thank you.
Yeah, Bill, it's a bit convoluted. It's a good question, but a bit convoluted for my ability.
No, I agree. I want to do it,
parse
and I want to do it right, but it seems like...
Oh, that was coming from you, Bill, right? The noise.
The clicking was me. I was clicking. I was overly smashable with my button.
You're getting background.
We're
noise,
also
Bill.
hearing a lot of fan noise. When you
Are you? Okay, so something must be
your mic.
going on with the UA audio plugin. Let me check. I had to do voiceovers yesterday. Mickey and I had to work long and hard at something, so let me see if I can fix that. I had a live directed session for the first time in a couple of months. Normally, I think people just send me scripts and I do them and send them out. This time, I had a whole bunch of people who were watching and listening.
What do you use to bring him in? Zoom?
Yeah, we did a Zoom call in the background, and then I just everything else as normal, and then send them the files afterwards. I did a local record, so we didn't try to record over Zoom.
What's that software that voiceover people use all the time?
Source
Or-
Connect. Or
Yeah,
was,
that's
right?
it. Thank you.
Source Connect.
Thank you, Jeff.
Service more than a software, but yeah. And frankly, I
Did
don't
you
think
see
it does
their-
anything or does it any better than this system. I think Zoom's
But
audio
did you see
is
they
getting
have
better and better.
they have this whole big platform now. I forget exactly what it's called, but it's a whole platform, browser based. Well, I think that in theory the talent could still use Source Connect, but then there's a whole browser based system for the studio, typically what they may be running. And interesting. And there's a free component that replaces like their they used to have like a web version, Source Connect now, and that's been replaced by this newer thing. So
It's always just yet another subscription for me. And did I want to do that if I wasn't doing enough work consistently month by month that was coming in via Source Connect? And before that, the hardware solutions that were always expensive to run.
Oh, the old Zephyrs.
Yeah, Telos Zephyrs.
I don't think you can get ISDN anymore.
I don't think so either. I think it's been deprecated away.
The folks at Angry Audio have a device that will plug into your Zephyr if you've got whichever version, and over the internet it converts that so the Zephyr thinks it's talking ISDN over using the internet to make the connection. So you can still get use out of your old Zephyr. Don't throw it out.
Yeah, I'm still going to say goodbye to I have had too many legacy pieces sitting that I paid $6,000 for and now isn't worth the cost of shipping it to the dump.
What Zephyr is about $3,000 or $4,000, and
It
maybe it's
was.
$50 or $100 now on eBay.
3/4-inch decks that I used to have, and there's all this stuff that came and went and was, you had to work really hard to earn enough to put in your shop, and then 10 years later, wasn't worth anything.
I've got a Betacam SP deck here
There you
with your
go.
name on it, Bill.
Yeah. How much did that cost? Is it a PVW or UVW?
It was a P. It was about
was PVW. Oh, God.
25,000. It's probably. I had to get a new power supply for it, and I bought the one on eBay, and I just swapped them out. I said, I could
What's
change
that, like
the power supply out.
$100,000 in today's dollars?
Yeah.
We used to have to work so hard to get those things.
And you can't find people to do the head work on them now.
Well, no, and the pinch rollers aren't made anymore. And those on those early decks, they only lasted about 7-8 years before they had to be replaced. Some of
What
them
happened
turned
to this
into
one?
goo. Yeah.
Pinch roller got sticky, and it grabbed the tape and back wound
Yeah,
it.
there
and
you go.
It's toast. You notice Dave has rewrote the question in question.
Excellent. Thank you.
May just be me, but Chat GPT seems to be falling over today.
Not feeling too chatty today. Is it?
For the folks that are listening beforehand, it is so important that you vote today. There are a lot of questions. So make sure to jump into Makana if you're in Makana and vote on the questions, what you like and what you don't like. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions about media production. And let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Bill, what do we have?
First one comes from Robert Soji in Los Angeles, California. Today, any updates on the ATEM Mini gray screen problem? Any suggestions on how to avoid this random issue?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, we still don't know exactly what causes it. We talked a bit on it on After Hours last night with Robert. The issue is that it seems when you're changing state with your camera on the ATEM and it's being connected to a computer via the USB, that occasionally some kind of flag gets set and it goes to the gray. So in order to deal with it, if you're doing like a presentation or a live event, make sure you reset all your computers, all your devices, make those connections, and don't disconnect your camera, and not likely to reappear in the middle of a program.
In general, you don't need to reset everything. What fixes the gray screen is just restarting your ATEM. So the thing to make sure to remember to do is save your startup state. So save the startup state so the ATEM has all the same stuff loaded in it and it's all ready to go and nothing's changed. So do that right before you do it. Then simply unplug the ATEM and plug it back in and it'll be fine. Like that's the only thing that's required. The reason I'm so good at it is for some reason it's happening way more often now than it did before. So I'm doing it, probably a couple times a week now. And I'm not sure exactly what's causing that, but I've gotten very good at resetting it. Next question.
Our second highest rated question today is a QR code question. It's from Elsa Hill in Portland, Oregon. I've been looking at the Tascam 12, which is an interesting immersion of a USB audio interface and a mixer. The mixer looks promising, but a bit out of my budget right now. Can anyone possibly recommend an alternative mixer audio interface with 4 or 5 inputs?
Yeah, I mean, I think go ahead, Courtney.
Sorry, I got late to this question. You know what I used for the first year on Office Hours was the Samsung MFX 124 M124 FX, which is a USB interface. It's a Samsung mixer. It has 12 inputs, four mic preamps, and the mic preamps were actually pretty quiet. It has a USB interface, And it's an analog mixer, but with USB stereo output, and it allowed good monitoring. And it's $124. So that I don't think that's it, but that Chris is showing. But it was it's still good, and I'd recommend it as an interface. With it has 48-volt phantom powering, it has 3-band equalization, and the ability to send to digital effects if you need something wacky like echo or something.
Yeah, and I probably wouldn't worry too much about the. I probably wouldn't worry too much about effects. I think that generally we want something to be really clean. I think the only challenge that I found with the Samson is that Courtney, I think that there's a lot of self noise in that machine. So Samson doesn't tend to make quiet components.
I didn't find the self noise to be a problem because I was using a pretty high gain condenser mic. But if you're using an analog, if you're using a Heil or something, you might have a little bit problem with the noise.
Yeah, so self noise was a problem. I would take a look at the Flow 8. The Flow 8 is probably, I think it's got 4 inputs, and it's near your it's less than that. Tascam, you really have to decide. It's not just whether you have a mixer. There's lots of mixers out there. What do you need in the mixer? Do you need a certain number of aux channels? Do you need faders? Because if you take away the faders, you've got things like the XR12 and other things that don't have those that work on an iPad. So think about what you really want beyond just the basic inputs. And then obviously there is a plethora of mixers that are out there. Next question.
David Brady in New York City comes up next. NDI build out. Our next space will be NDI driven. Rather than going through conversion to keep Blackmagic design, we're shopping for a switcher. NDI native, and he's looking at the TriCaster, the Panasonic AV-HS W10, or a 4A HVS 1901. Any thoughts? TriCaster I'm leering of. The other two are iron solid, I guess. A little cut off there.
I mean, so the advantage that you're going to get from the TriCaster is flexibility, and the fact that NDI was really made to supply the TriCaster with video. So that's what it was designed for. So you're really going towards it. So you get a lot of flexibility with the TriCaster. What you're giving up is occasionally some stability if you push it too hard, or if you use the computer for more than what it's designed for. Another one to keep into the mix for software might be vMix. That might be another one that you might want to look at in the software realm to make that happen. I'm assuming you're on a PC side of things for what you're looking at here. And the other one that I would probably look at, the Panasonic, I think is another one to look at. Panasonic's going to give you stability, but at the cost of flexibility and extensibility. So Panasonic is rock solid. I've owned a lot of Panasonic switchers. That's what I had before I had Blackmagic switchers. And I did find them to be very stable. They're just they tend to be a little slower to load things into and to adjust. So that's kind of the up and down of those. I've not had bad experiences with 4A. I just haven't had any really good ones either. So I don't have. I mean, I've used them, but they are much more popular overseas than they are in the United States. So I use them when I'm in other parts of the world, but I haven't used them in the U.S. and they just felt very limited, but also stable. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Up next, this ATEM alternative video switcher, RGB Link mini streaming HDMI switcher, has specs and pricing too good to be true. 4 HDMI ports and an LCD screen, and he's got a link there to it.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I don't know anybody that actually has it, which is really the best way to test it, but I can tell you what I don't like. It's a little clunky in the design. I don't think it really needs a T-bar on something that small. And also, I don't like it when gazentas and gazaltas are on the sides and on the back, because now you've got wires going every which way. But it does have a nice little quarter 20 on one end.
Yeah, I don't know why you would do this over an ATEM. Like an ATEM Mini at that price point is really hard to compete with. You're not going to have the software. The software really makes the ATEM Mini work well, and it's also part of an ecosystem you're going to grow into. There's not enough cost difference. If this was $100, maybe there's not enough cost difference to make this one really worthy. Next question.
John Preto in Las Vegas, Nevada. Alex, I often find myself wanting to answer questions while watching Office Hours. Do you think there could be a method for a non-panelist to answer, much like Mickey often does? We're trying to watch the panel. For a while, the chat had gotten a little rough, and so it was hard to stay undistracted. But so far, the channel has kind of tightened up a little bit, or the chat channel has tightened up a fair bit. It makes it easier for us to look over and grab things. And so, as a host, I'm trying to grab things from there when I can. It depends on the answer and what's going on, but I try to grab those. We are working on another tool that will allow our
camera panelists to answer the questions more directly. And we hope to have that out in the next couple months. Next question.
Ronnie Hofsoy, Tromsø, Norway. Medium to high quality headsets for conference use on Unity Intercom on iPhone Lightning cable is his topic, and maybe a good USB-C for the same situation. Any that should get special mention?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I'm assuming you want over the ear with a boom arm on the headset. I'd love to see the Audio Technicas get a USB version, but check out the JBL line. I think they're called Quantum, and they have a USB to USB. It's a USB-A, so you'll need to get an A to Lightning converter, of course, A to USB-C, and that might be your answer right there.
Yeah, there's I was just trying to come up with I have to say that I have not, for Unity, I have not connected my headset for a very long time to my phone. I use the OpenCom 2s, and I have two of them. I have two OpenComs, and I have two of them. And when one battery dies, I put the other one in. So and they both last 4 to 6 hours, I think. And so I've got two of them that I go back and forth. It is important to label them, otherwise you get them all confused all the time. So I have a 1 and a 2 labeled on the inside, and I find that it's worked really well. I don't find it. I do make sure that I only pair them with the phone that I'm using for comms. So everything else, Bluetooth can be a little bit tricky there. I've also used the Parrot for that as well. And again, I do use wired comms in other environments, but I find that trying to wire it to my phone I have tried that. I just haven't found any headsets that I like that don't create some kind of clunky thing on the bottom of my phone that has me want to use it less than I had it before. And I will say that those headsets are really great. The big thing about the OpenComs is that they're bone conductive. So what it means is that I can put my headset over top and listen to program and listen to all the other things, and I still have comms. So I basically have 2 sets of audio that are coming in, which has been really useful for me. Next question.
Michael Marsh in San Anselmo, California. The archivist he's working with has PCs, not Macs, so ProRes is not an option. What's the best archival video codec for PC?
I go, Jeffrey.
You can use either Cineform, which you can find on, I think it's GitHub or something like that. And then there's Avid's plugin, which you should be able to use and resolve. It's the DNxHD or DNxHR plugin for converting.
Yeah, DNX is probably the one that's the most popular as far as general archiving. As Mickey points out, DPX is a very high quality one, but those are typically DPX frames and they can be hard to manage. But DNX is a pretty popular one on the PC. There is support for ProRes on the PC as well. And I mean, I don't know what other productions are like. I can tell you in my world, ProRes is like lingua franca. Like everybody's using ProRes. Everything gets delivered in ProRes, unless it goes up to film and then it's being delivered in MXF. Next question.
Tim Mann in Melbourne, Australia is next. A venue I manage was struck by lightning. What checks would you run on your equipment after such an event?
Go ahead, Jeff.
2 things I'll mention that are often overlooked is for any computers that are on site, check their logs to see if those computers restarted at a time. That means they saw any power failure. And then that's a different case to look at them more closely. If they just kept on smooth sailing, if they were on ups, then better chance they weren't affected. And then the other one is actually check and test the ups. Load test them. I like the ones that have the little digital screen where you can actually see what their capacity is, see if it's consistent with what it was before the event, because ups will be damaged to some extent with a lightning strike if it got to them. So see if they still have the capacity and load test them. In other words, unplug them from the electricity and make sure they still do what they're supposed to do with the same runtime given the load.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, and just one little extra. Also, think seriously about replacing all of any power strips you have that have cutouts on them, because sometimes those don't work as well after they have that big a surge.
Next question.
Robert Soji in Los Angeles is up next. Alex, how do you like your Sony FX30? Would you still purchase it today?
I would. I like it a lot. At $1,800, I think it's a really good deal for what I'm getting for autofocus, good short depth of field, relatively good control. I mean, I wish it had the level of control that the Blackmagic cameras have, but the autofocus for what I'm using it for makes a big difference. So being able to have autofocus and being able to move around has made it a lot easier for me to have really short depth of field, but also be able to kind of not feel like I'm in focus or out of focus. So so that has been useful for me. I think it's a reasonably good camera. It's pretty easy to load LUTs into. I think it looks pretty good out of the box, although I do have my own LUT on it. I actually find it to be much more fiddly than the Blackmagic camera. So if I didn't care about autofocus, I still would probably like go out into the field. I'd still rather shoot. I've tried shooting with this and tried shooting with the Blackmagic camera. When I'm managing focus and it's not a webcam, I'd rather use the Blackmagic camera. And it mostly has to do with the software. So the software interface on the Blackmagic camera is a lot easier, even when you're not connected to a switcher and it's not part of the ecosystem. It's a modern menu system, whereas the Sony one is better than it used to be. I've owned Sonys for a very long time, and it's better than it used to be, but still a little challenging to get to things when you're working in the field. So I find that, and I also prefer the formats that the Blackmagic camera writes into. So those are the things that I would say that kind of set the Blackmagic above it for field work. I do find when I open the Sony and I take it out, a lot of times I've taken it out in the field because I was like, oh, I'm going to use this now. And I found that I just put it back in my bag and use my phone, because it was just like I can't quite figure out how to get to where I'm trying to get to. The way that it manages how you set up aperture priority and everything else, it's just, there's buttons on the back and they're not doing what they're supposed to, and so I just find it to be much more quirky than the Blackmagic camera for shooting footage where I am controlling focus and I am controlling those things. So it's not a one or the other. It's just that I really like it for what I use it for, which is a webcam. For me to take it out in the field and shoot, I probably still lean back into my Blackmagic cameras. And for my general purpose, obviously, I use my phone for a lot of things. So those are the three that I use probably the most. And then when I do high-end events, we're doing, Airy and Venice. What I will say is that I do think that, when I recommend it, my wife is on the smaller EV or ZEVV VE10, the $800 one or whatever. That was one I tested here and decided it wasn't right for me because it didn't have a LUT. You can't load LUTs into it. So my wife looked fine with it without that. So I've stuck with she has that one and I have this one. So the Sonys for webcams I think are great. For general production, I found them to be a little more challenging than the Blackmagic camera. So that's kind of my overall little mini review. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Is this a great light bar? The price is right. Logitech's G Litra Beam LX Premium Dual-Sided RGB LED Streaming Key Light with TrueSoft for streaming, broadcasting, light sync, Bluetooth, USB, PC, Mac, and it comes in graphite. And he's got a link there to Amazon.
Courtney?
That is a mouthful for a light. And looking at this thing's claim to fame is it has an RGB on the back and white on the front. So I think it might be good for doing a backlight, because if you're lighting yourself from the front, you don't want any different colored light bouncing off a wall or anything behind you that's going to contaminate that light and change the color balance of your face that you're lighting up. I generally like larger frame lights, that give a softer look, a larger panel than these horizontal bars. It might be good for a backlight, so you could light your background with the RGB light in the back and a color, and then give you a nice white rim over the top or over your shoulders. So it might be good for that.
Go, Jeffrey.
Yeah, it's meant for probably gamers, and so if you wanted to get that whole RGB feel when you're doing gamers, just kind of getting color throughout the whole shot, then you turn it around, but then you turn it back, you have that white, which is 27 to 6500 Kelvin. But I would go for something that actually would either be all white without RGB in it, because usually they're using the RGB LED to create white off of that, or I would find something that would be RGB WW, which is white and soft white, and with that way you can get more Kelvin range of color or white color, so you can get an indoor versus outdoor look from there. And just like Courtney said, there's not enough LEDs in there to really bring it onto a face or anything like that.
Go ahead, Chris.
It's an interesting statement about society because in the marketing material, the white is pointing at the woman, but the colors are just pointing at the wall. It's not part of her camera shot. It's just for her. Just so I feel cool. If I feel cool, I'll look cool, and then therefore I'll be cool.
Bill?
Getting into the real specific, since it's long and thin, what you're going to find is that on the sides of the light coming into your face, it's going to fill in wrinkles and be kind of soft. But top and bottom, it's not going to be. So if you have an issue like really bushy eyebrows or something, you don't want to cast shadows from them, this is probably not going to help you out. A squarer form factor that has light coming in from all directions will probably be a little bit better, but this will be fine for your web set.
Yeah, and I would think about, I'd be leaning towards the PavoTube 6C. That's the Nanolite, or Nanlite. I have lots of them, and I usually pack 4 of them with me. They're a lot more flexible. They're going to cost, 2 of them will cost about the same amount as money as that Logitech. You're going to have way more control over them, and they have little batteries built into them. And I take 4 of them typically and put 2 in front of me, and then 2 to color the scene that I'm in behind, just like Chris didn't like. I like to throw some purple color up there, make everything feel good. Next question.
Next one comes from Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. Can you talk about miking the typical talk show like Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, solely lavs or overhead booms as well?
Go, Jeff.
And what made me think of this is I was seeing some folks with the lavs and realized we rarely hear any of the clothing rustling or anything like that. Sometimes we see a wide shot, no overhead boom, but I remember other times when, the guest, reaches up and grabs a boom that is there. So I'm wondering what the current state of the art is.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Mostly lavs, a lot less booms being used. And most of the time you see a mic on the desk of the presenter. It's just there as a prop.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, for me, it's almost always lavs because you can put them in the right place, you can hide them, and a good person who rigs them will not have clothing rustle and things like that. That's something you can get by with technique. I will say that the only exception to that is if I have a lot of people being interviewed in a short period of time and I have like 15-minute tune around, then I almost always rig a boom rather than using lavs because I just don't want to waste the time with rigging people and making them look good.
Yeah, the desk mics and the boom mics, and there's always a boom mic in a scene like this, are always wired, and they are backups. They are, or not always wired, but almost always wired. I was on a set for one of these guests working on it, and I was surprised that it was wired. there was actually audio going into it because I thought it was a prop. But they are backups. There's always a boom in the there's multiple booms typically in there for the guests, for the hosts, and those are all backups in case something goes wrong. There's usually many of them are double mic'd. You'll see that more in the news organizations than some of them where there's 2 mics at the same time. So there's a primary backup for that as well. Obviously, the thing to also remember is that most of the shows that you're looking at are not live. So those are recorded 3, 4, 5 hours ahead. So they can stop. It's not if something goes wrong, they can stop and fix it and then go back to what they're doing. But when it's purely live, like what you see in Saturday Night Live or other things like that, at least on the East Coast, you may see some of those anomalies. Next question.
Gabriela Estero Mestira from Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan says, my Apple TV doesn't show HDR from some apps that are HDR capable and have HDR content that shows fine in other hardware. The box does pass an HDMI test and shows HDR from the menu page, just not apps like YouTube, Prime, Disney. Why is this and how to fix it?
Some of this has to do with the interchange between your Apple TV and what generation that Apple TV is, and the hardware that you have there. So it may not think that it's available on that hardware, or an older Apple TV may have its own issues seeing the proper area in the manifest that would allow it to do that. And some Apple TVs just don't support the HDR, or there's extra things there that are confusing them inside of some of these. Now, most of the larger streamers like Prime and Disney, they actually do a pretty good job, and they're actually building what we call dynamic manifests for most of the devices. And so they should be giving it the right information. But that is a challenge that we often see, is surround sound and HDR not being handled properly, and that has to do with the manifest that's coming into the device. And so that may be the case. You can go into Apple TV and actually set some of those manually to force them to do that. And so that might be something you also want to look at. I do that with my frame rate. It takes 2 or 3 seconds to see video every time I go to watch something. but but it does mean that it's in the local frame rate that it was built in. In my case, normally 2398 or 24. Next question.
Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware. Lately, my Apple TV is selectively blanking some shows within paid apps like HBO Max. Some work and some don't. What could be causing this?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, this just started happening on my Apple TV, and it only happens on the Apple TV. The other TVs are fine. And what happens is I might be watching like Tokyo Vice. It blacks the screen out when I try to load it. I can hear the audio, but the screen is blank. It's black. And on different services, too, like Netflix and HBO Max. So I'm trying to figure out, is it a handshaking problem? Is this something new? Are they pushing new handshaking criteria out over the HDMI?
Good, Courtney.
Well, if you're subscribing to 4K, maybe the 4K is triggering a bit in there, and it's not recognizing the 4K, so it's switching to black. The other possibility is, what is your output of your Apple TV plugged into? If you're going through something that doesn't support HDCP, it may be blanking it on those programs that have copyright set.
I think the question is, have you changed the system at all, Mitchell?
Not at all. It's been a very working setup for quite some time.
Yeah, the two things I would do is restart the Apple TV, and the other thing I would do is make sure that it's fully updated. So those are the two. Like pull the plug out of the Apple TV, wait 10 seconds, plug it back in, and then also make sure that it's updated. It may be just there was a build over Christmas that was highly unstable. And unfortunately, it was released right before Christmas. So a lot of us got to experience the Christmas break with an unstable Apple TV. Next question.
QR code submission again, this time from Michael Drummond in Dublin, Ireland. What is a good resource for a newbie trying to understand NDI and Dante networking and architecture specific to AV? It would be good, for instance, to understand how to set up VLANs with use case examples.
Good, Nigel.
So I can't answer the NDI, but I'll tell you about the Ordinate. I would Ordinate classes. You can certify yourself up to 3 levels. They'll particularly cover VLANs. I think it is in level 2. It's free. It's really worth doing. There's also a lot of good YouTube videos, but then more specifically about the device you're using. So get certified in Ordinate for Dante. That's the best start.
Yeah, and I believe NDI has its own certification courses as well. Those 2 courses, I know that the Dante ones, I took one a long time ago in person, and it was amazing. I am planning to go back and take the online ones as kind of a refresher. So we'll maybe even do that as a group. The NDI certification is also, I hear, is very good. So those 2 are there. Then the other thing that I would say is build a basic network that has some devices that would require all of these things. Start to experiment with them and ask questions here. We have some folks that use NDI here. So and when we do specials on NDI, which we will do at least 1 or 2 this year, then you want to come in. A lot of times we have the NDI experts on the show, and you can kind of ask a lot of questions there as well. Next question.
Chris Widener, Indianapolis, Indiana. Cloudflare streaming and VOD seems to work pretty well and be very cost-effective options. And he's got a link there. Opinions?
We use Cloudflare in a lot of our different aspects of Cloudflare in production. I haven't tried to stream specifically from it, so I don't have a hard answer there, but we'll take a closer look and see, maybe even do something that's more focused on Cloudflare in the future. Next question.
Zach Stahl-Smith in Chautauqua, New York. I need to convert 8mm video cassettes to a digital format. Can a VHS-C to VHS converter achieve this, or do I need to use a camcorder with an 8mm deck plugged into my computer to do this? I'd rather convert these myself rather than send them away.
Nigel?
I got a bit confused with the 8mm, the VHS-C, and the VHS. So I'm going to say, when I did this recently, I went and got a capture card, and you can get quite a good one from Elgato or someone for about $80. And basically you feed the analog version of the signal into the capture card, and that will then go into your computer. I would try and resist doing various different tapes and containers and other things, because you could end up damaging what you're trying to save.
Courtney?
Yeah, those are different formats. 8mm and VHS-C are completely different formats. So a VHS-C to VHS tape converter won't take an 8mm tape. So that's out of the question. You got to find something that'll play back those 8mm tapes. So if you've got a camcorder that plays them back, the output of that is probably going to be composite video. So you need a capture card that takes composite video in. So it'll have the yellow, the red, and the white for audio outputs. And then you take those out into something like a digital capture card. That's something that has a USB out to capture into your computer and record it there.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, Courtney got it. It's completely incompatible. It places these signals completely differently on the tape.
Go ahead, Bill.
Same thing that we always talk about. If you're doing old tapes, you're going to get your heads clogged because these have been around for a long time. The binding is not real strong. So do not do this more than once. Play them only one time. Play them for this capture and make sure you have the appropriate head cleaning cassette. That's a dry head cleaning cassette for 8mm. If you can find 2 or 3 of those to have them around, because as you play through your library, it will get clogged and it'll stop giving you a clean signal.
I highly recommend, if you have not played the tape for more than 10 years, probably 20 years, which is the format that you're talking about here, that you send them out. You find a reparable place. We'll maybe even do a special on this because we really should talk about it. But you want to send them to somebody. And I know that sounds dangerous, but it's not as dangerous as you trying to capture these yourself. If you haven't played them for 20 years, they need to be baked, which I thought was funny. I was talking to someone I knew, and there's an audio, very well-known audio designer that bakes their own tapes. Like that. Oh, I get
like a recipe. Set it to 350.
They know how to bake the tape, and we'll have to ask them if they ever come on the show. But I was like, you actually bake your own tapes, and they know how to bake the tapes, but I would not try that on my own.
Don't
I would send it to a
microwave them.
company. I would find a company to do this if the tapes really matter, and I'm assuming you're going through this trouble that those tapes matter to you. I would highly recommend thinking about how to send them out. If you really feel like you can't handle it, sending them over FedEx, fly out there with them in your carry-on, hand them to them, get a hotel room, wait for them to do it, but have someone actually produce, who does this every single day. They have a different set of tools. They have a different set of things. If you really want to keep that content, you're going to really want to think about taking it to a professional and having them manage it. Next question.
Mark Steele in Orlando, Florida. Why is yesterday's show being blocked on the Office Hours website for NFL content, yet it can still be viewed on YouTube?
Lawless. We're lawless. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
It's simply the contract that they have between the NFL and YouTube. If we did this 6 years ago, we would definitely get something more than the video basically probably be taken down. So they've worked really hard, especially since YouTube's doing the Sunday Ticket. They work really hard to get some sort of content to there, and then you have to do some pre-approval if you want to show any NFL content on YouTube and actually have it be displayed in different areas. You'd still get some sort of blocking, especially to certain countries. But that's basically what's happening here.
Worth it. That's all I got to say. It's worth it. I don't care about flags at all. So, because I'm not trying to generate revenue with advertising. What it would hurt us is if we were, we've been flagged, so we can't do that, and you can't see it on the website. But you can go to YouTube. But it is exactly what Jeffrey said. But totally worth it because I thought it was a great episode, and a lot of people seem to like it. Next question.
Robin Cutshaw in Atlanta, Georgia is up next. I'm using a CamLink 4K to feed an ATEM video to a Mac Studio. It runs 24/7 with no overheating nor resets required. The pros and cons he's wondering about using that versus the ATEM USB direct into a Mac.
Jeffrey?
The con would be that you're using adapters on cables, and that can always become problematic over time. Especially if it's the ATEM, like the ISOs, where you can use the USB-C cable to do recording. I like the fact that I can do both. But the pro is if the ATEM ever dies or gets unplugged or anything like that, your stream doesn't get affected because the video is still going through that 4K, which I believe works really well.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, one con to that is that you lose an output because the USB output is nice to use to go into Zoom, for example, into your computer. And I use the HDMI output to a second monitor, and with the switch on the side, you can then switch between any of the inputs of the program or the multi-view. And so you kind of lose that capability to have a separate monitor that you can monitor independent of the program out. So that's a big disadvantage. The other disadvantage is if you're using the software, you're going to have to plug your ATEM into the network to make sure that the software can see it on the network because it can't talk to it over the USB.
Mitchell?
A couple of pros. It will eliminate the ATEM gray problem because you're not using a USB connection. 4K is okay, but the ATEM's still only putting out 1080p. So there you go.
Chris?
I'm wondering if we're seeing a theme here, Alex. You were talking about your thing that you have to keep resetting. Courtney mentioned his funky Apple TV all of a sudden causing problems. I know that my 6K has started overheating in the last year. Is this stuff just gathering a lot of dust and needs to be like cleaned out, and it's just a heat issue that sometimes?
I think that there's some. I think it's more of a software issue. I think that there's other things that are going on that we keep on updating things, and all these things have to interact with each other, and they're all handshaking. And I think that for whatever reason they're not handshaking well. So I don't think that. I don't think it's dust. I mean, it could be. I mean, there's a lot of dust in my office, but I don't think that it is.
Somebody mentioned to me, they said, well, maybe your fan stopped working. I was like, is there a fan in the 6K?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't remember hearing it lately. Maybe my fan died. Maybe that's my camera overheats by about 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, that might be the case. There is a fan there. And if you've left it on for a very long period of time, it might have died.
Like 2 years?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I know that the LCD screen doesn't last that long. Next question.
Next one comes in from QR codes, and it looks like Brian from Taylor, and it says, Alex says that he records YouTube TV, but his playback examples for the Super Bowl graphics were in QuickTime. What gives?
Secret sauce. So a lot of these folks have. We answer usually most of everything, except for the fact that the back end that I'm using, I'd like to keep on using, and if I put it on the show, it may not continue to exist. And so I'm not trying to hide something because I have some business reason for it. I just want to keep doing it. So secret sauce. Next question.
Chris Widener, Indianapolis, Indiana, says, since Facebook will disable API access for live streaming and comments in groups, and YouTube can be problematic for training content, I had a video blocked for doxing for having a fake contact list up. What's your go-to for training?
My go-to for training is actually YouTube, unless I need it to be private. And so I think that basically what I do is I look at what does YouTube not like to do, and then I just don't do that. And if it pops up, I go, oh, okay, that's a new thing not to do, and I just build my training around that. I don't find it to be that hard to work around YouTube. YouTube is, again, we put up the Super Bowl yesterday, and sure, you can't watch it on an embedded site, but you can still watch it on YouTube, and it got flagged for something, but they let it run through. So, that's a pretty brazen use of content. I feel like it was well within fair use, given that we didn't watch anything regular. So I feel like I'm legally able to do that. But I just really haven't had that many challenges with it. I will say that Vimeo is the one that we would use otherwise when we do private streams with a budget or under budget. We use Vimeo. There's more expensive versions of what Vimeo does, but Vimeo is the one that most people do when they want to stay outside of a lot of the rules that are already there. But Facebook is creating a lot of opportunity right now by shutting down a bunch of things that people really were attached to. So there is kind of a new amount of chaos, and where there's chaos, there's opportunity. Go ahead, Chris.
I'd be super curious to know just how fake this fake contact list is. Is it like Donald?
It just looked like addresses. I'm
Bill
sure
Gates,
it just looked
Johnny
like addresses.
Appleseed.
I'm sure it just looked like addresses. Like the Google Eye saw addresses and were like, whoa, no. and doxing is a big deal. And so I think that's you have to kind of blur those things out or have things. But if it looks like an address, it's going to get blocked because it's a huge problem because it's really in the gaming world. They've been doxing each other and oftentimes, and so that's been a real problem. Next question.
Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada is back with, could this be the future of sports broadcast, please? And he's got a link there to a YouTube watch site.
Nigel?
Yeah, this is the video of an F1 race. I think it's the Yas Marina race where the creator has simulated on his coffee table what the track actually is. And so you can see using something like a Vision One headset, there's the TV playing, and then you can look at the track and where the cars are on the track. He actually did it a couple of years ago for an F1 competition. So it wasn't actually just driven by the recent Vision One announcement. I'd love to do a Vision One. I'd love to be able to buy one. The reality for someone like me is I don't have the use case yet. I'm not a developer, but I do think this is the start of a killer app that might push someone like me over. I watched 20-something races. I've already paid for my subscription for the year, and I think this is the sort of live event that could really drive adoption of this technology.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, gee, I hope not, because it's going to be, honey, we need to get a bigger coffee table. I can't watch F1 anymore, because it's just not big enough to accommodate the track. And I want to know, do they have little animated explosions when the cars run into each other on the track or not?
You're just being a curmudgeon. You're just being a curmudgeon.
That's my job here. And it's just like every other future technology shown in movies. It's always, they've got these transparent screens that everyone's using. And so some idiot will come up with a transparent screen, Samsung, I'm talking to you. And it has no practical application. It's harder to use than a regular screen. And if you have to strap something to your face to watch sports, it's going to disappear.
I think it looks amazing. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I did get to see a little bit of this at CES, the Canon booth, and I got a video coming out very soon that's going to be showing this. So basically, what happens is first of all, it's about camera placement. You got to put cameras for F1. I mean, that's a lot of cameras to get all of that, certain types of cameras. The biggest problem is that's what you see. You can't zoom in on things. You can't move things around, at least just yet. You won't be able to do that, but the one thing is, you can definitely get stats and get extra graphics. Yeah. It's fun to watch, definitely.
Go ahead, Nigel.
I was just going to make the F1 has more telematics on those cars. They know where they are every split second from multiple camera angles, from multiple things. This is the perfect example of a database thing to do this with.
And I've done lots of VR tests, or quite a few VR tests of putting data around the content, and it is like you don't want to put your headset down. Like this is going to be it's going to be a killer app. I do think that, to Courtney's point, I think you're thinking too small when you think the coffee table isn't big enough. People are going to want whole rooms just for their VR. Like there's going to be a 15 by 15 by 15 room that you want in the house that you can just have VR. Because I know that I'm already feeling a little cramped, because I can't move around enough. Next question.
Robin Cutshaw in Atlanta, Georgia. The Insta360 Link is down to $249 US, and I'm considering a second unit. Current thoughts on that versus the OBSBot, which has a UVC to HDMI adapter for direct ATEM input.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
The only thing I can think of is that the Insta360 Link is kind of like it's the offset of what they do, which is the action cameras and the 360 cameras. This is the only over the PC USB-C camera that they have there. And I'm guessing that the Link 2 is getting ready to come out since there's a price reduction here. But I've been using a lot of the OBSBots myself. I've got the OBSBot Tail Air, which works really nice. You don't even have, you can use the NDI on it, or you can use HDMI on there. And I think that's where I would go towards because of the HDMI ability in the OBSBot Tail Air.
So the tail, you want something that has HDMI out of it so that you can control it separately. So you probably are wanting to look for an OBSBot. If you really want a PTZ that goes into HDMI, I would really just try to think around that. So I think, I think that you're going to constantly be fiddling with it if you try to go UVC through HDMI. So there's a couple different webcams that have the ability to do HDMI and UVC, and you want to do and control from that. I will say the OBSBot software is about 1/10 the power of the Link 360 or the Insta360 Link. The Insta360 Link software is amazing. So if you can find a software solution for that, it's great. But I wouldn't try to find some way to go through HDMI. Next question.
Nick Batt in the UK is up next. Just figured out I can run OBS on a Raspberry Pi 5. Great for graphics into an ATEM system under companion control. Any other neat Pi applications?
Playout B. So if you're doing Playout for graphics, depending on what you're doing, I don't know if because it's your Pi, your OBS will be, if you're using graphics, you're probably not getting a key fill out of that. So I would really think about a Playout B. It's really built for that, and it'll tie right into the HyperDeck controls and so on and so forth. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia says, help, my new room for streaming is in the front of the house. Will noise from the street and noise from the street can be heard? Suggestions, please. And he's on a low budget.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, low budget wise, your best place to start, Tony, is with the room treatment itself. Put things that will absorb sound, like a heavy curtain over the window, perhaps some things on the walls to absorb a lot of that extraneous noise. That's the best place to start.
Go, Jeffrey.
Trees and hedges. You get something on the outside blocking in. That'll help.
It'll help a little. You do want to try to fill up that window pane. So Mickey suggested block out the window with DIY rock wool or fiberglass insulation panels, and then cover the entire wall with a very thick curtain, which will definitely make a difference. The big thing is that air that comes in from the. What we've done also is taken thick plastic, not so thick that it's a pane, but like it's like a 1/16 of an inch. And we put it against where the window goes in. So it creates an air package there, and we seal it. And what happens is it slows down that audio really quickly, and it's pretty effective. Next question.
Michael Marsh in San Anselmo is up next, transferring old VHS tapes. There's a lot of rainbow banding noise. Is this a sign of tape degradation, poor tracking, or headwear?
Go ahead, Bill.
Yes, and it's also a sign of old, poor storage because people left the VHS tapes flat, the edge curled a little bit, and then the helical tracking head on a VHS player will not read that last piece, and at the end you often get a little hash that's kind of colorful and goofy. There's not much you can do about it unless, again, you go to a professional transfer house who will have tools to try to flatten it out and get there. This is a hard thing to do home by yourself.
Next question.
Zach Jeffers in Spokane, Washington. I just discovered VOD Ninja via Dash Master 2K via Guy Cochran. Thanks, Guy. Does anybody use VOD Ninja and or the WebRTC for recording interviews or remote program multiview? And if so, how do you integrate WebRTC into your workflow?
I mean, a lot of us use some version of WebRTC to do this. And so there are, Squadcast, there's Riverside. Those are going to do double end recording, which means they're going to record on the far end for the interview as well as letting you look at it in real time. And so that's going to give you a higher quality record. Then also there is Zoom, and Zoom, a lot of us use Zoom for these things. There's also a service called Stream Voodoo. And Stream Voodoo will let you just send somebody a link from your computer, and you can turn that bandwidth much higher. So a lot of people are using it for edit bays and so on and so forth, where I can send something out and send you a 20 meg 4K 60 stream that you can look at. And so it's going to be much higher quality. Now, all of these are real time, and they all fall into the real time trap. What we see coming in the near future is the ability to do dual streams. And so those dual streams are a WebRTC for you to interact back and forth, and at the same time sending either HLS or SRT to another ingest that is going on, so that it can download those a little bit slower, 5 seconds, 10 seconds behind, where it has enough buffer to make sure that it gets every frame. And those are all things that are kind of in the works. So I would keep your eye out for those. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next, and he says, with Fournier Audio introducing the Transform engine, the Dante connected VST3 plugin server, where does that leave proprietary live plugin platforms like Waves SoundGrid?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, there's quite a few SoundGrid installations everywhere. I would be curious whether or not your VST3 plugins from everything, including Waves, would work in that server environment, because a lot of people have a big investment already out there. And going to a new system will take some time.
Next question.
Mike in Middletown, New Jersey says, I've noticed that there are no new podcast feeds, and he's talking about Overcast and Apple Podcast apps, since the end of last year. Nothing new for 2024. I have deleted and resubmitted links in both apps, and they both show nothing new. Just wanted to let you know. That's a
Thanks.
QR code.
We're working on some adjustments to the podcasting, and we should have those up by the end of the month. So keep your eye out for that, and then everything should start to relink again. But you can see why I add features very slowly, because once you add them, then people will ping you when they're not there. Next question.
A. Schultz in Los Angeles. On Monday, Alex mentioned Sony is working on a camera with a similar form factor to the Blackmagic Micro Studio camera. Do you have any additional information on the camera and or a timeline for its distribution?
I believe it's the Sony LR1, and I think that's the right. So I find Sony's the way that they name their cameras to be extremely confusing. The LR1, the ILX LR1. It is $3,000, and let's see if it's still, and it is available. So here is this is what I'm talking about here, and I haven't used it yet, so I'm not going to vouch for it yet. But it's a full frame sensor. This is what it looks like here. And if you look at it, if we turn it around, you can see that it's really built to be on a let's see if I can get an angle here. It's really built to be on a drone. That's what they built it for. But you can see that this is, it has a lot of, external controls here, so that you can make those controls. So it's designed to be about as compact as it can be. I think so if you look at it here, imagine this is as close to a webcam with a full frame sensor that you could possibly get to, I think. And so it's something that a lot of us are really interested in, but we haven't. Obviously, the cost is still pretty expensive. I don't believe there's any battery in it, so this is potentially a very, very high-end webcam that's there and very light. But I don't know, how it handles heat, how it handles a lot of other things. We do want to test it to see what it looks like, because it looks pretty compelling to see how that works. So stay tuned. We're hopefully going to get our hands on one in the not too distant future, and we'll let you know. Next question.
A. Schultz in Los Angeles. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. Alex, did you leave us with a cliffhanger yesterday mentioning observations when Tony Romo and Jim Nantz stood up, or did I miss it?
Oh, no, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that one right now. Hey, we're going to push this one back and ask this tomorrow, and I'll actually have the video up. I meant to get that video up, and we've been moving around, so I'm gonna hit cancel. Oh, yeah, and we'll bring that one back in tomorrow. But it's a great question, and I will. I'll answer that. It wasn't a cliffhanger. It was mostly that you can see stuff when they stand up that you couldn't see when they were sitting down. When sitting down, the frame was perfect, and when they stood up, it was not. And I thought, I bet you they didn't think they were going to do that because there's no way that they put that set in front of 123 million people on purpose. So anyway, we'll talk about that in the future. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Have you ever had to deal with impractical or over-the-top artist writers that you can't meet? What goes into diplomatically negotiating writer requirements as a venue or sound provider?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I've done a few concerts before with artists, and I think they're testing us sometimes with the writers, because they say they want a grand piano or brown M&Ms and not any of the other colors. I think if you make an effort to satisfy all the writer requirements, you're okay.
Next question.
Next one comes from Anawahahi Black Bear Marshall in Oahe Nation. Why does the QR code webpage not accept my questions? It just sits there with the questions in the box each time I hit the submit button and doesn't confirm being sent. Am I using it wrong?
I don't know. I guess the question would be is what browser are you using? It's not a behavior we've ever seen. So I don't know what, that's something that we test it relatively often, and we get a lot of QR codes coming in. So I don't think there's no reason it should do that. It's not designed to do that. So you should be able to just push it, but we'll take a look on the back end and see if there are any that are getting hung up somewhere. But keep trying. What I would do is I would restart. If you're on a phone, I'd restart the phone. If you're on a computer, I'd restart that. Open a browser, open a different browser. See if anything's happened, and let us know, because we want it to work for you. We just don't know why it wouldn't be. Next question.
Zach Jeffers in Spokane, Washington, looking for an AWS AMI for Windows plus vMix for cloud workflow, trying to save dev time for a quick turnaround project, ideas on acquiring a trusted image.
We need to build something where we talk a little bit more about that. We're getting ready to start incorporating VisVector into our workflow. And so we don't know as much about, we're going through all those steps for that. And I'm a little less knowledgeable about vMix, but we should do a vMix thing at some point where we talk about how to get it installed on the web. I think there are some web development or web production that we've done in the past, but I'm not sure if we've really focused on vMix that much. So we'll put it into our second hour suggestions, and we'll see what we can figure out. Next question.
Robin Cutshot, Atlanta, Georgia. My Dante virtual sound card software on Mac has become very unstable since upgrading to Sonoma. I'm using a separate dedicated NIC into a Netgear M4250 switch. Anyone else having issues?
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, I'm having exactly the same problem. I thought it was a clock elevation problem, so I've been watching that very carefully. What happens is the sound drops out for a second, 2 seconds. I'm not sure I've ever been able to time it fast enough to know it's happening. So if I really care, I've been using my Avios to provide a much stronger physical link, because I've found that DVS has really, since Sonoma, just suddenly drops out on me.
Go ahead, Chris.
I would like to yield my time so Alex can tell you not to upgrade too soon.
Don't upgrade too soon. Next question.
Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. In Logic Pro 10X, near the bottom left, there's an instrument volume next to the output volume, and yet near the top right in Logic, there's another output volume. Are they both the main volume output?
Man, I'd have to open that up, take a look at it. And so we'll try to get back to you on that one. Ask that again in a week, and we'll see. We'll do some research and try to figure that out. I'm not sure where. It's hard for me to visually picture where those things are. A lot of times, a lot of us are using those pipelines in a very specific way, and we don't notice the extra versions that they have there. Next question. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
That was for the next question.
Next question.
On Oahe, Black Bear Marshall and the Oahe Nation, in the streaming tech, what's different in the new system so it's not keeping up well enough for audio and video streams to often start on time by 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time? No audio, video says unavailable, or is still a few minutes in the countdown. Maybe Zoom Theater was good?
Yeah, we're continuing to make changes. The only thing we're promising right now is that we're going to do YouTube. The audio stream is a beta. The radio is a beta. All we're promising is 7 a.m. to somewhere near between 8 and 9 a.m. every 6 days a week. And there's another version of it on Sunday. Everything else is beta. We're constantly moving those things, and we can't promise that they'll all work. Next question.
Gabriela Mysteria back from Sault Ste. Marie with no audio gain today. Is that part of the show now just broken, and what makes it so difficult to start? Do I just need to upgrade the app?
Again, why I don't add features very often to what we do. I'm sorry, but we can't, we're testing things. Sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. Next question.
QR code submission, this time from Jesse Kester in Glendale. What's the process for pitching a show for the Office Hours Network? We'd like to be running regular streaming labs with our team and feel like this would be a good environment to do exactly that.
The best thing to do is reach out to me. So if you're trying to do something and you'd like to incorporate it, definitely let me know what you're trying to work on, how it would integrate to what we're doing. There's not really an OH network, but there is obviously friends of OH that are doing things on their own and putting those kinds of things in. If you're one of those, and if you'd like to be part of that, then reach out to me and we'll discuss it and we'll figure out how we can support you. Next question.
I'm seeing the Chester Sweeney question. I think I read that. In Logic Pro X near the bottom left, there's an instrument volume next to the output volume. Didn't we just do that one? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I think we did. I think that, go ahead and we'll jump into Jeff's question here.
Jeff Cohen.
By the way, the funny thing is that we started this, the funny thing here is that we started this show with the most number of questions that we've ever started a show.
It's amazing.
We have, and somehow we've achieved the ability to answer questions faster than we've ever answered them in history, in our history. And that's saying something. I mean, we've done this 1,400. What's our number of episodes? Does anyone know what the number is? It's 14 something or other. Anyway, so someone usually knows what that is, but I don't know if I know what that is. But anyway, so I thought for sure we were going to send back 10 or 20 questions, and we did talk ahead of time about being efficient, so that we could answer the questions and not answer them shortly, but also answer them, without too much extra chatter. And we did really well. The panel did really well of cutting right through that. But yeah, go ahead. Let's go to the next question here.
Well, actually, it's from Jeff Cohen, and is this a record for the most questions answered?
The answer is yes, 100%. Most questions answered in the first hour today. Next question.
Robin Cutshaw, from Atlanta, Georgia, comes up next. What device would you use to get 8 to 16 channels of audio out of a Mac, given the Sonoma Dante instability?
we're still. So I guess what I would say is that it is number one is you want your own NIC. So you want to. You're going to want your own connection, Ethernet connection out of it. Don't use the built-in. So that's one piece of that puzzle. Of course, you can get an extra card that's going to do it if so a card can make that work. But what I will say is that I am using Sonoma on. I said don't upgrade too fast, but I did upgrade and it's been fine. So I'm having no problems, and I have 4 computers. I don't have my main computer on Sonoma, but I have 4 other Mac Minis that are on Sonoma, and they're working just fine. So, so I think that it really depends on what you're trying to do there. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, the virtual sound card doesn't necessarily have to be the only way to get audio in and out of your Mac.
Right, exactly. And so it depends on how many channels you're trying to get, and you're trying to do 8 to 16. I think virtual sound card is still going to be the easiest one for you to do, but of course you can, John Wallace says downgrade and use Dante. But I'm using Dante on Sonoma. I'm not having stability issues, so I'm not sure what's different about my system. I've got, I guess the only thing I'd outline is that if you don't have a piece of hardware with Dante in it, it will not work. Like your Dante network needs a hard chip in there somewhere. You can't just do software to software and expect it to be stable. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I'll just add real quick for the video. I know that in Sonoma, they finally, and they even waited till like 14.2, I think, to start enforcing a change they announced years ago, which is for video like virtual webcams, for example, it must be the new architecture of their extensions versus the other ways that work. And so anything that didn't make the change after years of advance notice stopped working. There's a workaround where you can disable some security things. So it's worth looking into. I wasn't aware that they had the same enforcement for audio, but maybe something happened there as well.
And John Wallace noted that we are running, this entire show is running, the infrastructure that this show is running is on Sonoma and uses Dante, but we do see a little bit of instability here and there. So we're all working on it. Coming up in the second hour here, Bevan is here. We're really excited to have him. He's going to be on in just a minute. Quick reminder that tomorrow we're going to talk about spatial video. What is spatial video? How do you shoot spatial video? Why do you shoot spatial video? So we're going to be talking about things like HEVC and what it takes to get there and why we might want to do it. So we'll be talking about that in the second hour. New volunteer meeting at 9 a.m. on Saturday. So if you're interested in volunteering, it's a great way to contribute to what we're doing. It's also a great way to meet a lot of other people. We have a new volunteer meeting. So this is an introduction to volunteering. So if you're interested in that, it's going to be at 9 a.m. on Saturday. You'll see a link go out on Discord for that. If you're not in Discord, then you have to get the emails. If you're not in the emails, you go to the website and sign up, and you'll figure out how to get there. And also, NAB volunteering will cut off tomorrow at noon. We've got, I think, 35 people signed up right now. We think that that's probably enough. But if you're still interested, you can go ahead and sign up. You'll see the sign-up form in Discord. Welcome back to the second hour. I'm so excited. So we have here's Bevan here from Moog and from Moog Music, and I have to say that I've got a Vision Pro. I just start downloading apps and I start, you start testing them, you start opening them up, and I looked at I'm a big Moog fan. So I looked at the Animoog Galaxy and I was like, whoa, $30. I was like, they're and I was like, oh, maybe I kept on going around it. I finally went, oh, I have to know. I just have to know. And so I downloaded it. I went ahead and paid for it and downloaded it. And wow, like it was like I opened it up and I felt like there's a lot of things, there's things that I've talked about in the past that I'm really excited about. And that is that like JigSpace is really cool, but I have been talking about something like JigSpace for 20 years. We had a team doing tests 20 years ago trying to figure that out. It's really well done, but it's not groundbreaking. And it didn't have me think, oh, I'm looking into something in the future that I hadn't thought of. That was the thing that was really so, and that is what I believe that the Animoog Galaxy did is I looked at it and I never thought of playing music with my eyes, and I was just, and I started playing with it with my hands, and I'm sitting there, and my daughter made a lot of fun. My daughter's a musician. She plays one of these. She came in and she can hear me, and she's like, "What are you playing?" Because all she sees me is tapping and going like this, and I'm moving my, I'm inside, my head's going back and forth, and I'm tapping, trying to, build something, and I'm just blown away by it. And so anyway, I reached out to Bevan. He's the director of software at Moog Music, and I was like, like, can you come on? Can you come on and tell us, like, how did this happen? And so Geert was kind enough to agree to come on, and we're really glad to have you here, Geert.
Well, thank you, Alex. That's such a heartwarming story. Yeah, we poured our heart and souls into Animo Galaxy. I started with Animo before I joined Moog because I got excited by the possibilities of, at that time, multi-touch on iPad. You could sort of touch the sound by moving your hands on a multi-touch display and then have all these beautiful animations. But it was always conceived as being a three-dimensional thing that was initially collapsed to 2 dimensions. And then when the rumors started about Apple doing a VR headset, we were like, oh my God, I hope this is going to be awesome. Because then we can make Animo the way that it's been envisioned since the beginning. Then we can actually have these comets fly around in 3D. And we can have this unique experience that transports you. That is what makes me so excited about Animo. It's a musical instrument, but it gives you this very joyful, fun, exploratory music-making experience. It's not about, like, a lot of musicians have gone into the realm of, like, I gotta be a good performer, I gotta be a good producer, I gotta, like, make all my tracks and records, and you get into this production mindset. Like, it becomes a job, while music is so much more to a lot of people. And that is where Animo sort of positions itself. And I hope we, like, took that to another, like, environment or galaxy with Animo Galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what's so interesting about it is this idea that you really felt like you were playing in a completely new instrument, and that the flexibility of that instrument felt, I don't know if it's, I would say unlimited, but felt very much less limited to instruments, because there's so many ways for you to grab onto the music and to interact with the sounds. And it was just something completely new. And I was like, I can't wait until, with anything. I mean, I listen to my daughter plays, 4 or 5 different instruments, and I listen to her play, and I know how long it takes to get good at something, and so I know that it's going to take a while for people to get their head around what to do with this. And again, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on early on, is so that we get some tips and tricks from the person who built it of how, at least what your thought process was as you built the software.
Yeah. It's always a very challenging endeavor where, when people step up to a violin, they don't expect to be able to play it, right? Like, everyone knows that when you start with a violin, it's going to take years to get to a spot where someone actually wants to listen to you. It takes years
before you're not hurting everyone around you.
Yeah. And so it's an interesting exercise in this day and age when you create a digital product that is intended to be a musical instrument, but that doesn't alienate people from the get-go, but also allows this path towards virtuosity. And there's a number of things that are necessary for this. And that is one of the reasons why with the Moog apps, we've largely stayed on the Apple ecosystem. They nailed the latency and jitter response so well. And they also did that with Vision Pro. Them focusing on this one gesture where you pinch, you look at something, you pinch, and then you drag. The responsiveness is so good. It is 10 milliseconds. And so it's actually 12 from photon to photon. So when the camera discovers it, and then it would project it into your eye. But the audio latency is less than that, because it can be generated before it generates the image. So it's around 10 milliseconds, which is low enough to allow for virtuosic performance. And it also is low enough to allow just exploratory performance, to allow people to get into a feedback loop. And that is what generates creativity, where you don't feel like you're being hampered by the technology, but you're always like looking for the next thing that can give you that rush, that feeling of, hey, I made a cool sound, or this melody is really cool, I want to build upon that. In order to reach that, you have to have that very fast feedback loop. So yeah,
Now I hear you can actually. I think we got you set up so you can show it to us in the
Yes.
vision. So let's,
I can do that whenever you want.
let's do it. Let's jump in. Let's take a look.
Okay, so this is obviously new for me because
It's new for all of us. We've only had the headset for 10 days. So I mean, you've had it a little longer, but we've only had it for 10 days, and so we're I know that we're all still trying to figure out how to get video in and how to make it all work and everything else. So we'll see how this goes. And you're a single strapper. Like there's not that many. We don't find single strappers very often.
I love the single strap. Here's a tip. I realized one thing, and I was going to post about this, but I'm just going to tell it here for the first time. So I shave my head, but I don't shave it completely flush. I have little stubs. And these actually grasp into the fabric of the single strap,
that's great.
Which gives, and it's not annoying, but it gives it that extra grip. And I can just pull it up real high and then tighten it a little bit, and it's so comfortable. I can. My longest has been 10 hours without any neck fatigue or any pains or anything. So here's a tip: if you want a single strap, shave, but not completely. I don't know.
That's the new Chris.
The Vision
Chris
Pro haircut.
in our forums. He's all ready to go. Yeah, exactly.
Haircut.
So let's go ahead. Let's see if we can see what you're seeing.
Let me just start. There's a few steps to go through. So now, well, there we go. Obviously, this is. I'm supposed to mirror my display to another Mac. And it's not seeing it right now. So I don't know why that is happening. It just did 10 minutes ago when we
Right, exactly. Because it's live.
It's live. It's always what happens, right?
That's what happens with live. Oftentimes it'll be there and then it won't be there. Now you're actually you are pairing it to a Mac, not an Apple TV, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me try to force it.
Yeah. And again, this is, I think, the first time we've had.
There we go. I got it.
The first time we've had a software developer showing their product on our system. So we're going to figure it out. There we go. Okay.
Yeah. Hang on. So now I need to restart OBS somehow on this side. Okay. I'm sorry that this is.
No worries. This is again.
We're seeing the art card, so that's good.
We're on the outer edge of what we're doing. And not a lot of people have been bringing live guests in to talk about their products in the Vision because it's only 10 days old.
Yeah, you should see my view.
There we are.
I see it. We see it.
Yeah. So this is my wild setup, just because this is not yet a recording studio, because I moved in here not that long ago. But so you have these floating icons here. These are my Vision Pro apps, and there's Animo Galaxy right there. So I can tap on it, and it starts up. And this is how Animo Galaxy starts. Can you hear the audio?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here audio.
Let me turn it down a little bit while I talk over it. So this was the first idea of Animo Galaxy. This is Vision Pro. Vision Pro starts in shared space. It's like you can be doing a lot of things. I could be pulling up a browser. I could be doing all of the stuff you typically do with Vision Pro. And people often have music in the background or sound machines that make white noise or ocean noise or rain or whatever. What if you have a synthesizer and like a visual and audio synthesizer like Animoog that can be your sound machine? So this was the first idea for Animo Galaxy, where you have this sound machine with over 100 presets, different sounds that you can pick from. And you can put it in the background and just have something going on while you're doing something different.
That's great.
And then if you feel like you want to change, you can just let's say I'm going to put the volume up a little bit. Oh, I actually want it brighter. And turn the cutoff frequency up. Or I want to, you see this little dot in the middle, which is, it's called the origin, around which the path and the comets, they actually orbit around it.
And they are related to the sound, right?
Yep. So I can move this around. And see here, it was a little bit more vibrato. and based on how the preset is set up, this will change the sound. So it's this joyful exploration without having to know anything about music. You can just explore what is going on, and the shapes will change. You can like make it faster if you want to, and get into these really cool geometrical shapes. So that is the sound machine, and you can create your own sounds. You can create your own patterns and sequences that are being played in the background as you use this. And then there's a second layer to it. So you can see there's a play button on the left. If I turn this off, then obviously it doesn't make any noise, or it doesn't generate any images. Turn it back on again, and then you can go to Galaxy. And Galaxy will basically teleport you to like the whole Animo Galaxy experience. So let's get in here. So what happened now is you can see that I'm still in half immersive space, right?
Right.
You can still see my computer. I could have a playing keyboard here, and you can connect them remotely over Bluetooth MIDI. And you can, if you want a tangible playing experience, you can connect a MIDI controller and have your virtual experience all around here while playing with a keyboard right here. So that is the initial, like,
And how
for
do
a
you connect it
musician,
over MIDI?
over MIDI, over Bluetooth MIDI. So there's a settings
Bluetooth.
button
Okay,
there.
got it.
I can go to MIDI, and then here you can select all the MIDI connections that you want to have. Right?
Got it.
So I can go to Vision Pro. There is the dial at the top here allows me to bring in complete immersion, and now you have like the full Animo Galaxy experience. And we spent a long time on this.
I have to admit, when I first popped into the Galaxy, I was just like, whoa! Like the whole place got taken. It gave you that little warning of, hey, you need to make sure you're in a safe place because you're not going to be able to see anything. And I just really felt like I got taken somewhere.
So these are all procedurally generated. We did a lot of experiments with what works and what doesn't work. Stars are not just little dots, Alex. They're difficult.
Yes,
they have different
stars,
changes in hue, and like there's a particular dynamic range that works between the different brightnesses. And then we generate all of these nebula also.
Right.
And every time, and you can actually go to the settings here. If you stay on the same preset, you can sort of go in and generate new galaxies if you want. So that's a fun way. Well, there's something in the back here. So it's all around you. It's worth exploring. So this is the instrument. So we just teleported into Animo Galaxy, and the basic change between the sound machine and this is that I have a playing keyboard that appeared, right?
Yeah.
I still have a volume. I still have the preset. I can browse between the presets. And I have this play button that is the sequence that is still playing. And now I can look at a key, and you can see that the keys are highlighting as I look at them, right? There's this subtle change in brightness, as what happens with Vision Pro widgets. Mm-hmm. And I can look at it and then pinch my finger, and it starts playing that note. And I can articulate it. I can go up and down to bring expressiveness in and out, and then move it around to the left and right. I can dial in correction, which is basically if you want to be able to do vibrato. So then you can get vibrato in.
And it's like a little bit like a theremin, right?
A little bit like a theremin, except that the axes are reversed.
Right.
But if you completely remove correction, then you can do smooth slides. Which is very tricky. But you can learn how to play it. So this is very engaging in my mind, because you have this sequence that is generated for you that actually uses the scale of the keyboard that is in front of you. So you can't play out a tune by default. And then you can drag this little slider at the bottom and play higher or play lower.
That's great. And these, again, can be connected to MIDI if you wanted to. So you can do it with or without some kind of physical interface.
Exactly. And still here, you can tap the origin and do that exploration again if you want. If you are somehow positioned in a way that this is not comfortable, you have a drag bar at the bottom. You can move it up and down, bring it closer to you, and move it farther away. We did make one decision when building this where direct touch is not working on the sliders. It is working on the buttons.
I don't find the direct touch to be that usable. Like I'm fine with, not grabbing onto them.
That's why we decided to not do it, because it creates a whole set of problems that we didn't feel there were good solutions for. And this is already so engaging, and it is kind of nice to have that, you called it out, this gesture, the theremin gesture, where you have your hand with a pinch. And that brings us all the way back, for people that know the history of Moog music, to the beginning of Moog music, where Bob Moog basically started with theremin kits. So it's this really nice technological arc in my mind, kind of heartwarming to me. Yeah. So once you're done with this is sort of like performance exploration space. You can click on the sliders in the bottom left corner, and that expands everything. So now you have access to the sequence at the bottom, so you can enable and disable steps. You can go in and program individual steps if you want to. So all of this is programmable while things go on, so you have this immediate gratification. And then to the side, you have these floating glass panels that allow you to dial in every single parameter of the synthesizer. So here we have that cutoff slider that we had in shared space. And this is a really cool thing I want to call out that Vision Pro enabled. One of my pet peeves with SynthDesign is that I don't think it's necessary to litter a UI with markings of every possible thing that a slider or knob can be set at. Now, with AR, you can grab a slider and see it dynamically shows in a pop-up above my hand what the actual value is. And if I go here, for instance, the shape of the LFO, again, it gives me another readout. So this is one of the, I'm really excited about these type of things, because it evolves what UI and user experience can be like.
And I feel like this is really, version 1, and it's amazing. But I felt like I immediately, I think of, these pictures of giant Moog setups, from, and with all the wires and all the bits and pieces and all the things that are tied there. And I realized this is the very basic version, but I can see how you could end up with a wall of controls, that you're kind of building, and it's all virtual. You're not, because that's oftentimes the larger setups are a real commitment, financially and space wise and everything else. And I could really see this turning into something much, much bigger. And I just saw it it was one of those things I was like, oh, this is cool. I don't know if I should have spent $30 on it when I was on when I was just a little silver thing and I'm going through it. And then I hit the Galaxy and I was like, oh, okay, now I understand. Now I understand what it took. And so have you what kind of feedback have you gotten from musicians already?
People that have not tried it have a hard time imagining what it will be like. So they might be overly critical, which is totally understandable. Yeah. Everyone that has tried it, that has given me feedback, has given me similar feedback to you. Because it's a new experience. And I think we did the best we could within the limited time frame and the limited access to technology. And this is just the first step, but we want to explore what is possible in this new paradigm. So like you said, this is a starting point.
Yeah, it's I think the first time I put it on, I realized that at some point I realized I'd been there for an hour and a half. It was just, at some point I was like, wow, I was just kind of sitting, and I think that's something it happens in the Vision Pro often, that you just suddenly realize I've been here for a long time doing something, and you didn't really think about it that much. Right. And you get into something, and same thing happened with me with Jig Space and other things. I was going through each piece and breaking it all down and figuring it all out. But this one was just, I just found myself making music that pleased me. I don't know if it would please anybody else, but I just was enjoying making it.
That's such a very important part of music. It is a very personal activity. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we've gotten over the years for Animoog and Animoog Z on the iPad is people that are like surprised at how well their kids are getting on with it, and even kids at young age, because it's a little bit like Minecraft, right? You have this vast universe of possibilities you can be creative with, and there is no need to perform. You're just having a good time. And if there is an element of creativity attached to it, you actually get this like fulfilling experience. And to some people, it's actually very grounding. Like the most emotional letter I had was a family that had an autistic son, and the only way for their son to be able to ground himself when he goes outside is he takes Animoog on his iPad with headphones, and whenever he starts getting into an emotional state that he knows he has a hard time dealing with, he just dives into Animoog and makes a little bit of music, which allows him to center himself, and he can just go on with whatever environment he's in. So
and I do
all
think
these.
that's a really
Sorry.
powerful thing about an immersive experience, and I think a lot of music can be that way. Is that you can, especially when you get off the ground quickly. So this is like you were talking about before. The violin is kind of like, I'm going to make a lot of noise for a very long. My son plays the violin, and he's not making noise anymore. He's actually making music, but he plays violin. But there was a couple years of noise that were really pretty hard to listen to, and so you really have to have the faith that you're going to get through the noise floor and get to the music, room. Whereas in this, in a lot of these types of things, you get to the music part pretty quickly, but there's still a lot more that you can actually do.
Yeah. So yeah, I liked your call out about the Moog Modular. One of the things that I've seen people do, and I've done it also, is Apple has been so smart in bringing in the whole iPad ecosystem. So you can actually bring up all of our existing synthesizers that work on iPad, including we have one that is the Model 15 modular synthesizer, where you have virtual patch cables that you can like pick up and move around, and you can have it in this like really giant form factor, and it feels so immersive. So it like where we'll be going with this in the next few years is so exciting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that you're going to end up with giant people building, because these are all synthesizers. These are all things that are making sounds based on, based on code and based on hardware. There is no reason why you couldn't end up with a giant modular, a virtual. I mean, I think that for Moog, in some ways, this is a really explosive market, because I can get a headset and now build the largest modular setup ever. That does everything I want to. And not only can I do it the way I used to do it, which is plug, and turn things and everything else, but I can add all these extra ways of interacting with it that you couldn't do in the real world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Really interesting. Really interesting. We got a couple questions rolling in. Let's go ahead and jump into the first question.
Sure. The first one's from Chris Carr in Michigan, and Chris asks, is there audio output from Vision Pro? Like, can someone use it for live performance?
It's a really good question. There is, but
we heard it, so we're hearing.
Yes, you heard it. So you have to do it over screen sharing. This is the way I did it. Another way you can do it is you can have a Bluetooth receiver, an audio Bluetooth receiver receiving the audio. Now, the biggest problem there is only the AirPods Pro 2 USB-C. I know it's a mouthful, but it's basically the latest AirPods Pro 2. They have an H2 chip that is optimized for Apple Vision Pro with an audio latency that is good enough for live performance. But the problem is then you're the only one hearing it. To my knowledge, there is not yet an external Bluetooth receiver that is able to achieve the same levels of latency. But in my mind, that's just a matter of time. That is such an obvious
it definitely feels like
grasp.
It definitely feels like the Vision Pro is about 20% of what they want it to be this year. It's there's if you see what's there, you can see there's an awful lot of hey, there's a blank wall here. You know there's going to be something here. You just see a grid, but it was like wall, brick, and then like a virtual grid.
Yep,
You're like, I know that there's something.
this.
Yeah, exactly. So at some point, they just had to ship. But I think that I'm really excited, and really excited to see what happens at WWDC as well. Because I think that it's going to be an exciting time. Next question.
John Snyder in Reno, Nevada. Is there a way to play multiple notes at the same time, or does vision control prevent that?
That's a really wonderful question. So this is, again, a limitation that is tied to just the initial version of the APIs. We've been talking with Apple about this. At the moment, due to how the layers that are being built up in the technological stack, you are limited to one drag gesture at a time. However, I know that this is going to improve. So 2 is something that will be possible. And as soon as we can make that work, that will be inside Animal Galaxy for sure. Now, just calling that out, another way is to use a MIDI keyboard, and then you have full polyphony. You can still play all your notes, chords, and then use the virtual controls by looking, pinching, and dragging, and basically expand your capabilities beyond of what your physical controller is able to do.
So you can easily mix back and forth. You can be playing a keyboard and then grabbing onto something with your finger and then playing the keyboard.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it was the first app that I jumped into, and I was just like, okay, this is an entirely new future, for what we're doing, as opposed to just taking something from somewhere else. It's just really, really interesting.
And it's like a little tidbit about that. And it happened on iPad also 14 years ago. So Apple has this, and this is in my mind one of the biggest strengths of Apple. They have this huge ecosystem of very well-developed APIs. Now, sometimes they're a little bit more stable or less stable, but they have a huge ecosystem. And they keep improving and pulling the capabilities over to the next thing. And when I was talking to our developer relationships guy at Apple, I said, look what we just made work. It's doing Bluetooth with a MIDI controller. And he's like, I had no idea this was possible. So it's because they pulled in core audio, and they pulled in all the core audio features, including Bluetooth MIDI. And then there you have it. It works.
That's amazing. Next question.
Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is up next. How does Animoog manage spatial audio? Is the sound stage subjective to the user?
Another wonderful question. Our initial intent was to actually allow you to give a slider that the positioning of the comets would be spatial audio positioned. Limitation of the API again, and we are also working with Apple in making that possible in a future version. At the moment, spatial audio doesn't allow for real-time synthesized sound. It is geared towards samples or buffers of sound that are then positioned and moved around, but not that are streaming in real-time continuous buffers of audio over multi-channels that are then positioned in space, like in the Vision Pro space.
It seems like if you think about that as the sequencer, you could theoretically have something where you change the mode. So the sequencer is running, and you're not changing you get to a point where I'm done with the composition, but now I'm going to change the mode to, I'm now going to position this in spatial space. And now what it does is it just burns those into samples. When you hit it, it just converts those to samples. It might take a second for it to convert them all to samples, but now you can't change them, but you can change their position.
That's a cool idea.
I mean, that way that you'd be able to move them around inside of that. And you could, if you reopened it, it leaves them in that, potentially leaves them in that position, or, you couldn't move them, but either way, having it be a mode, like you're in the spatial mode versus the composition mode maybe would get around that, but it would be.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah. Hadn't thought of that.
Next question.
Next one comes from Douglas Carmichael. Could you see any potential in extending the Animoog Galaxy interface as an immersive MPE controller for external MIDI devices? Would Wi-Fi latency be an issue for that use case?
Great question. You already can. So the way Animoog Galaxy is designed is you can turn it local control on or off, and it's got a MIDI output. So you can use the current keyboard as a 3-dimensional controller for any sound source that is connected over MIDI, including iPad synthesizers that run on the Vision Pro. So you could, for instance, have our Mariana bass synthesizer running in a window and having the sounds of Mariana being generated by playing Animo Galaxy. As soon as the multiple gestures are supported, then it will be full on MPE with multiple gesture and multiple expressiveness.
Next question.
Dave Troutman in Edmonton, Canada. Up next, is the audio space the same as the visual space? How big can this space get? I don't have a Vision Pro, he says, just curious.
I mean, I think that right now you're in a still kind of a desk space, which is a, you're sitting there with everything around you. So I guess the question is, but I feel like it would be infinite in the number of places. I mean, you could literally build a recording studio, like a whole thing where you had a desk here and a wall over here that you could walk to, or other things like that. Or I think in some cases we think about that, and that's a little bit of applying the past into the future. Whereas, I think that, and I'm just kind of spitballing while you think about the answer there, but I do think in the Vision Pro, I think of a lot of times you get used to pulling things in. Like, I want this to come in, I want this to come in. I don't have to stand up and walk around anymore because I'm not constrained by time and space. Go ahead.
Here are my thoughts about this. One of the things that is heavily underutilized in Vision Pro at the time, it's because it's not well documented, but I have a prototype app that is exploring what those capabilities are, is anchoring and world tracking. What does that mean? I don't know if you've used any other virtual reality headsets, but Vision Pro doesn't require a room setup. You just put it on and it automatically sort of does in the background the AR scan of your surroundings and then actually remembers it. And you can sort of see it when you take a window, when you move it around, and you leave it there, and then you go to another room and you come back, it's still there. Now, this can persist across restarts. So in the prototype app that I'm working on, you can actually have virtual controllers or virtual devices that you, for instance, position right next to your mixing desk or right next to your synthesizer. And this would be in your studio. And then you go home and you do a whole bunch of other ones there. And Vision Pro remembers what those world anchors are. So based on what you just said, Alex, it is infinite. It's just basically however far you want to be able to reach into the virtual space, you can create augmented reality or virtual reality content.
I do feel like this is also why I keep on feeling like there's going to be a future where where I have one of my rooms just be an open square, because there's things like I don't want furniture anymore. I want a couch that comes out of the wall and that I can sit down in. And other than that, I kind of just want a blank space of 15 by 15 by 15 so I can just kind of put things in it. It's a different approach. Next question.
Mickey Makachor, Manila in the Philippines. How many individual synths can you run at a time? And can you place them around you and at varying distances to create an immersive mix?
You are limited by the processing capabilities of the computer, which is the Vision Pro. It's got an M2 chip, so it is really capable. Like, these M2 chips are mind-blowingly powerful. Depending also on how much CPU power each synth uses, you sort of have these axes of, this is what my computer is capable of, this is what the synths use. I've been able to, and then I sort of ran out of things to do. I've been able to run 6 iPad synths, and you could just have all the windows open and then control them with a MIDI sequencer, also virtual. And you have this virtual, like, Windows synth sort of studio around you. And then, yes, as you drag these windows around, they are positioned in the spatial space that Vision Pro offers you.
Next question.
Tlaloc Lopez Waterman, Galisteo, New Mexico. It might be interesting to output a visual experience on NDI and then also be able to send audio. Thoughts?
Totally. Yes, Great idea. One of my ideas with Animoog Z, the previous version of Animoog we made, was that I actually wanted to be able to connect a dedicated visual generation output that you could use on stage, and that would only have the flying comets, and it would only have that immersive visual animated experience, while the performer has all the other synthesizer controls. Yes, it's possible.
Next
Great
question.
idea.
Josh Kaufman, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What's the potential for using Animoog in tandem with other virtual instruments as they become available? Do you see a future where multiple musicians can collaborate in a space?
Yes. So Apple has something they call SharePlay, which is also still in its infancy, but makes me very excited. Initially, we wanted to implement this in Animoog Z, but it didn't work exactly the way we wanted, so maybe in the next version. It is totally feasible to have an instrument where you could have multiple people creating sound together, seeing what the other person does, and then locally preview, but then send whenever you're happy with it to the shared space. That's sort of one way of doing this. Another way of doing this would be, imagine you have this virtual canvas of synthesizers that you want to work with, and every person can sort of pull in the synthesizer that they want to be responsible for, and as if you are a musician in a band and playing this particular instrument, and have that happen together at the same time. I don't see this being very far off, given the state of Vision Pro and the APIs.
And in the current, could you theoretically, I mean, can you integrate the iPad Moog software with this software, so you can
Yes.
tie them
That
together?
That is already possible and working great.
And can you tie other people's? Is there a protocol to tie other synthesizers or controllers back to these?
That is not yet implemented, but it's not far off.
Seems really interesting to be able to sit there and build, buy lots of different music objects or music apps, and then be able to loop them all together and to build kind of definitely a virtual studio.
It's this interesting thing. When iPad music making started, Audiobus came around and allowed apps to send audio between each other, because initially they were sort of like sectioned off in their own little silo. Then Apple created inter-app audio, sort of like the standard way of doing this without going through the Audiobus protocol. And then they sort of deprecated inter-app audio and promoted plugins with AUV3 that you would use in your DAW. And as I was trying the multiple synth thing out, when I just got to Vision Pro, I immediately created a feedback request for Apple. It's like, please undeprecate inter-app audio, because it is actually working. Because now it actually makes sense, because you can have all these synthesizers just in different windows, and you route them all together, and you sort of have this virtual patch cable behind the scenes. It makes so much more sense than having a DAW inside a window with then smaller windows inside that window, which then feels very limiting in Vision Pro.
Yeah, that's great. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Hertz, I was touched by your story of the autistic child using Animoog as a therapeutic tool. Could you see a market for dedicated apps to assist that population using AVP or cheaper AR goggles like the X-Real range?
For sure. I think this is such a profound way of helping people and allowing people to participate in challenging parts of life. I always try to keep, since I heard that story, and it was actually a very moving letter when we received that, I always try to keep that in the back of my mind. Like, do we stay inclusive for these people?
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's very important, and I think that this is only the beginning for this.
And I find that a lot of times these kind of more immersive music makes it not only deal with challenging parts of life, but challenging people around you. I'm in an airport a lot. I spend a lot of time, and sometimes getting away from that works really well.
Yes.
Next question.
Tlaloc Lopez Waterman, Galisteo, New Mexico. People speak about leaving apps in other rooms on the Apple Vision Pro. If you do that, do you hear the music in the distance.
You do. Like it gets fainter and it is positioned based on where you left your window.
It's a very fascinating thing. I leave my windows in the wrong rooms more often than I'd like to, because I'll pop something up because I'm here now, and I might be in the kitchen doing something, and I pop up a window and then I forget. I'm like, where is that? And I'm like, where did I put that window? And you can tap it and bring it up, but I often try to figure out. I was like, oh yeah, I left my window in the kitchen.
It's kind of a fun little, like find Waldo game, but then find the window game where you're like, where did I leave it? And like you, I want to find it. It's like, I think I left it over there.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you see the back of it. And then when you look at it and you pinch it, it sort of like zooms back. And it's like, whoa, I just teleported this thing through time and space right in front of me.
Yeah, exactly. Next question.
Chris Carr in Michigan's up next. Is there an expression, pedal, or lever type of control for it, or is that limited by the single pinch finger tracking?
Great question. It's MIDI capable, so you can connect any MIDI device, including a Bluetooth MIDI pedal. If you have an expression pedal tied to your pedal board or to your synthesizer and are able to send that out over MIDI, you can connect it to Animo Galaxy. Now, an interesting thing is your device doesn't necessarily have to be Bluetooth MIDI compatible. There is this company called CME that creates a whole suite of little dongles called WIDI, W-I-D-I. You can plug them into your DIN MIDI in and output. You can plug them into USB outputs that allow any device that sends and receives MIDI to be able to do that over low latency Bluetooth MIDI. So that opens up basically any device that exists.
That's great. Next question.
Tlaloc Lopez Waterman, Galisteo, New Mexico, has come back with this one. Can we see or hear another demo?
You have anything else you'd like to show us?
I can play around with this as much as you guys want.
Yeah, play around. We got a little time. If you want to throw it back on there, we'd love to see a little bit more.
Okay. Let's see what the demo gods do this time.
Yeah, we're...
I think incense offerings to them help. Just saying.
It does? Okay, let me restart this. There's one thing that I noticed, like when you screen share, sometimes the audio device doesn't really reset right, and the audio is still streamed to the built-in audio. So sometimes I need to force quit just in order for the audio to be routed to the screen share. And now I need to try to get my computer to appear again, just like initially. Demo gods. Well, it seems like this time is even more challenging than last time. It's just not seeing this computer at the moment. Oh, hang on. Maybe it's, yes, it popped up. That might be right. Yeah, I figured out what was happening. So if you have a Vision Pro, let me switch to this. I need to restart OBS also. If you have a Vision Pro and you have a Mac that is using the same Apple ID, it will, by default, show, you won't see it now because I'm connected to it. Yes. It will show this little thing above your Mac saying, connect to your Mac. And so that was going on. It was showing that as a connection option, which meant it was not showing the mirroring option in the notification center. So you guys can see my Vision Pro screen.
We can.
We can. We're good.
Okay.
And I heard the system sound, so we're getting audio as well, I believe.
Okay.
Yep, we hear it.
So let me go back into Animo Galaxy. You can pull up a bunch of other sounds. So here to the side, when you use this little gear, you have a full preset browser where there's over 120 presets. I kind of like this one. It's a little car, and instead of having things orbit around the path, they actually follow the path at a particular speed. sorry, I can't hear you. It was a bit loud.
And can you save and share these?
Yes. So you can go into the presets here and save them. And then as you go to your files browser, your user presets will be stored on the Vision Pro, and you can send them to anyone.
That's great.
So you have this other feature here. This is the base. I can go to a recorder here. It's not recording random stuff because this is a random generated sequence. And now it's playing that back, what I just recorded, right? It's not playing it in the interface anymore. What I can then do, imagine that this is the scale that I'm working with. I can go to scales and I can lock it so that as I switch presets, it keeps me in the scale. And let me now go to, I don't know, this preset. And I can play this on top of the audio I just recorded with the looper.
Right.
And I could record this also. Oh, I should have done overdub. Go back. And so now it is actually playing back what I just recorded, and you can sort of like infinitely loop. This is another fun one. You can actually use the Vision Pro gyroscope and accelerometer if you use the mod matrix. So there's a mod matrix where you can connect, let's see what we have here, accelerometer Z, which is connected to the filter frequency. So let me turn this off. I can play this note. And as I move my head, it's actually controlling the filter frequency, which is why this is named Headbop.
It's great.
It's just fun stuff. Let's see what
I'm waiting for the first album to be released. All created inside of the Vision Pro. Like this is like everything that you've heard was all created inside of the ecosystem. And I think we're probably weeks, if not only months away from that actually happening.
I agree, because you have all the iPad apps that work. So actually, let me show that. So this is Animal Galaxy. So I'm
and I
running
have to admit, I thought about this, and I hadn't thought about bringing in all the other Moog apps that I already have into the ecosystem. It's really interesting.
So I could go to compatible iPad apps, and let's say I can bring in all the 15 that we just talked about. So here we've got our giant modular. I can go in and I can, it's a bit loud, I can play that one.
And again, this also could be tied in over Bluetooth MIDI.
Yep. And I can bring it in close if I want. And there's one limitation currently, but also Apple is working on it. So if you use an iPad app, you can see here. So this Animal Galaxy has been built for Vision Pro. As I look at a widget, you have the hover state that shows where my gaze is looking at, right? This automatically works if you use standard widgets that Apple provides with UIKit or SwiftUI.
Right.
The way we've built apps on the iPad is basically the way you would build games. So it is actually using Metal, which is a rendering framework inside the Apple ecosystem. And there are no widgets. This is all rendered in real time. So currently it doesn't do any gaze tracking. They say that they have something that will allow you to do that for the next major update. So currently one of the challenging parts is I can look at this filter frequency, but I can't actually confirm that is what I'm going to work with. Same for this cable. So an easy way currently to work around that is just to bring it a little bit closer, and then like your area that your gaze is latching onto is a little bit larger. But like imagine that you have, this is your modular, right?
Yeah.
And you just like browse around in it. Do all the things. It's pretty wild. And then this, you can connect this then to Animal Galaxy. With the MIDI outputs can connect together. Actually, I bet that if you go into MIDI here, you see Animal Galaxy is appearing as an input.
Right.
So I can connect it up here, and it's just going in between the apps on the Vision Pro.
Huh. Yeah, it's really interesting.
So yeah.
Great. Next question. Well, you can go ahead and leave your headset on. We'll just keep on asking you questions while we're there.
Okay.
Sure. The next one comes from Douglas Carmichael. And Douglas says, could you see a solution for wired connectivity from the Apple Vision Pro to MIDI devices and or audio interfaces for low latency performance?
I think this is going to be up to manufacturers to create it. But to be like honestly, BLE MIDI is so good.
Yeah.
I challenge you to feel the latency. It's about latency as if you would be playing an instrument and have your amplifier on the other side of the room.
Right.
If that is bothering you, then it's going to be difficult to adjust to a whole bunch of different scenarios. So I think MIDI we're covered. It's mainly the audio part,
Right.
but I'm hopeful since you have one solution that sort of works with the AirPods Pro to USB-C. So there is a technical path towards getting speakers connected over low latency.
Next question.
Next one comes from Ron C. Robles in Mexico City, Mexico. How has the experience been in developing for the Vision Pro?
It's a great question. One of the things I prefer doing when I start working on new apps or new technology paradigms is first sit down and see what is available. I've seen other people doing the opposite, which is imagining what they want and then trying to contort what is available to what they want. Often that is a challenging experience. I'm going to switch my view back to here because otherwise I don't see anyone. It's kind of weird for me. But I'll keep my headset on so that I look Daft Punk.
Daft Punk was so ahead of the schedule here.
So in my history of making things, I've done this quite a few times where a piece of technology comes along and first thing I do is sit with the core capabilities. Like, what is the nature of this thing? What is the sandbox that I'm actually creative in? And then from within there, come up with a product design that actually embraces the capabilities as opposed to trying to like compete with them. So for the Vision Pro, we started when the SDK became available. Was it in June or July?
Right.
And it was not ready. Like, obviously, right? So the simulator crashed all the time. Like there was a whole bunch of things that didn't work. So we kind of tabled it. It's like, we'll get back to this. We had a number of other products that were already scheduled, so we worked on those. And then around the end of August, beginning of September, we did another round. I was like, okay, where are we at now? And we prototyped the challenging pieces. Like, can we actually get a key that you play? Can we actually get the synthesizer to work? Can we actually have something where you switch between like the shared space and immersive space and make this be a continuous experience? Like all these things we prototyped at little spikes. One of the challenging parts was this transparent glass. What can we get away with in terms of transparency and overlays so that you get this futuristic sci-fi feel within the limitations of what the Vision Pro ecosystem allows? Once we had that running, we knew what our parameters were. And I've been very, very surprised at how quickly you can actually develop for it. Swift UI finally has become mature enough in my mind to actually get really like productive with it. Xcode is in a good state. The simulators are so much better than they used to be. I remember from iPad how challenging they were. So I'm now in my second app, which is a personal app that I'm working on. And since I've not had to do all this initial exploration, I'm almost done with the initial version, and it took me a week and a half. So that to me is sort of a testament to the speed and ease of development of this platform.
Yeah, it's interesting that when you think about how you approach the software development. About 20 years ago, I was interviewing a Shona sculptor in Zimbabwe, Bernard Matamera. He's probably one of the greatest sculptors in the country at the time, and he talked about how when he makes a piece of artwork, he has an idea of where he wants to go, but then he negotiates with the stone. Like he's like, I'm working with the stone. And I looked over, there was this stone carving that was broken in half. And I said, well, what happened over there? He goes, I negotiated too hard. He said, I thought I knew where I wanted it to go, and the stone didn't want to go there. So I think that I always think about that when I think about development, is this negotiation with the medium that you're working in, and that dance that goes on between the two.
Yeah, and then also knowing when to say no, when to say, okay, this is now not a feature because the resistance is too hard. We'll get back to it. It's fine. Like, there's so many amazing things you can do already. Just focus on what works well. That's sort of my advice there.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill, you had a last question?
Well, yeah, I was just interested when you were talking about it. Is there a place where you're redefining dance music from creating music for dance to creating music by dancing? I was fascinated when you were changing the envelope by movement. That to me just opens up an amazing world.
So you have all these cameras here that actually do your tracking. It's one of the things I want to also explore in the future. So I have this other app that I've been working on for the last decade that uses a Leap motion controller, which allows you to detect gestures in space, right? This is the old initial version of it. But they have a very limited sort of dome of interaction that you have to stay within. And my initial idea was, what if you fill a stage with it, and now the dancers can actually be the parameters for the sound? Since Vision Pro is attached to you and it basically moves with your gestures, this could open up that whole realm of being able to. And then what I'm excited about, and maybe that is a little bit not what people expect, I'm not interested of seeing dancers very precisely control a sound, because that would be annoying. Like, now all of a sudden, like, you have to contort yourself into this weird position just to do that thing. Now, what I think would be interesting is to create these flows where your movements a little bit like generate like circular motion that you accelerate or reduce or change in angle and position based on the impulses you give. And in that way, as a dancer, be able to interact with sounds and create organic pieces that mimic or are related to the movements that you make. Anyway, that's the way that I'm looking at it.
Hear a ballet. That would be fascinating.
That'd be awesome. So awesome.
Geert, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Really so great to have you on the show. We're just really excited. When you have new things that you want to show, please come back.
I will. Thanks so much. This was awesome.
Yeah, really, really great to have you here. Thank you to the producers for all the great questions to keep the first hour and the second hour going. Incredible group of questions today, both in the first hour and the second hour. We really appreciate your contribution. This is a really short show without you. And thanks to the panelists for answering many of those questions in the first hour and being part of the second hour as well. We can't do this without you as well. And we also can't do it without the incredible team on the back end. This is not a vanilla Zoom event. This is there's software and there's hardware and there's teams and there's management teams and there's people cutting the show from all over the world and managing that process. And everybody comes together every single day to put this together 7 days a week. And we really appreciate everybody's contribution to make this actually work. We traveled. If we had to go all over the world and ask these questions one by one, our what we call our Tlaloc traversal, which I will find here in a second because I don't have it here. It's not
103,693 miles, 166,878 kilometers.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing up in my interface right now. How many bananas for scale?
821 million bananas for scale.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. Oh, that was great. I don't know why it's not showing up. Oh, it didn't show up. For some reason, it didn't show up in my panel chat. It's interesting. I was suddenly like, usually what happens is I look in the panel chat and there's there, and I was like, oh, I don't know. Where did you see it, Bill? Where was it in the panel chat?
No, I saw the Chad Lafarge piece in.
Got it.
Yeah.
Heard that was great.
Yes, it was really wonderful.
Great day. Thank you.
And a great, like you said, great team. I wasn't aware of this show before you contacted me, and been so impressed every step of the way. So yes,
Thanks,
awesome.
boy. Can't wait to have you on. Anytime Moog's doing something, let me know because we'd love to schedule you guys in. I've been a huge fan for a long time.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. See you later. All right. Bye.